Maria's hands trembled as she stared at the tarnished silver locket she'd just discovered beneath the ornate Victorian dresser of the mansion she'd cleaned for 15 years. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman whose eyes mirrored her own, alongside an inscription that made her heart stop. "To my beloved daughter, never forgotten." The wealthy Harrington family had always treated Maria with cold politeness, but as she clutched the locket to her chest, memories of her mother's tearful confession on her deathbed about a baby given away to a rich family flooded back. As snow fell outside the mansion windows, Maria faced an impossible choice: return the locket and continue living her quiet life, or confront the family whose secret could shatter everything she thought she knew about herself and them. What shocking truth will Maria uncover about her connection to the Harrington family? If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe to our channel, and share your own experiences with unexpected family discoveries in the comments below. The sound of Eleanor Harrington's heels clicking against the marble floor sent Maria's heart racing. She slipped the locket into her uniform pocket just as the bedroom door opened. "Maria, I need the silver candelabras polished for tonight's dinner," Eleanor said, her voice carrying the practiced coolness that had defined their interactions for 15 years. "Yes, Mrs. Harrington, right away." Maria lowered her eyes, a habit formed long ago. As Eleanor left, Maria exhaled slowly. 15 years in this house, and still, her presence was acknowledged only when giving instructions. It hadn't always been this way. Maria remembered her first day at the Harrington estate, clutching her recommendation letters with trembling hands. Back then, Miguel was just 8, his father long gone, and the position offered stability they desperately needed. Robert Harrington had interviewed her himself, surprisingly warm for a man whose name graced hospital wings and university buildings. "Your references speak highly of your attention to detail," he had said, his eyes kind behind expensive glasses. Eleanor had appeared then, evaluating Maria with a gaze that seemed to search for flaws. "She do," she had declared, as if Maria were a piece of furniture. That day established the rhythm of the next 15 years. Robert's occasional kindness, Eleanor's distant scrutiny, and their daughter Catherine's polite indifference. Maria moved to the downstairs sitting room, dusting the family photographs that chronicled the Harringtons' perfect life. Robert and Eleanor at charity galas, Catherine graduating from law school, vacation homes in the Hamptons and Switzerland. A life so different from Maria's small apartment where she raised Miguel alone. Miguel, the thought of her son brought a smile to her face. Now 23 and in his final year of college on scholarship, he was everything she had worked for. Their nightly calls were the highlight of her days, his voice filled with stories about classes and internship applications. "One day, Mama," he often said, "you won't have to clean anyone's house anymore." The weight of the locket in her pocket felt heavier. She had never stolen anything in her life. Taking it felt like crossing a boundary she couldn't uncross. Maria paused at a photograph of Eleanor from years ago. Something about the woman's Isa sadness that her perfect posture and pearls couldn't hide. Over the years, Maria had noticed how Eleanor would sometimes stare at her when she thought Maria wouldn't notice, with an expression that wasn't quite disdain but something more complex. Once, Maria had overheard an argument between Robert and Eleanor. "She deserves to know," Robert had said, his voice uncharacteristically harsh. "We agreed," Eleanor had responded, ice in her tone. "Never." Maria had assumed they were discussing Catherine, but now, with the locket burning in her pocket, she wondered if there was more to that conversation. The sound of the front door opening startled her. Catherine entered, briefcase in hand, looking every bit the successful corporate lawyer in her tailored suit. "Hello, Maria," she said with the automatic politeness that required no response. "Good afternoon, Miss Catherine. Your mother mentioned dinner guests tonight." Catherine sighed. Another evening of father's business associates and mother's social climbing. Joy, the rare moment of candor, surprised Maria. Catherine usually moved through the house like a ghost, present but separate. "Is there anything I can get you, Miss Catherine?" Maria asked. Catherine studied her for a moment, as if really seeing her for the first time. "No, thank you." She paused. "You've been with us a long time, haven't you, Maria? 15 years this March." Miss Catherine nodded slowly, That's longer than most of Mother's friends have stayed in her life. With that cryptic comment, she headed upstairs, but Maria returned to her duties. But her mind remained fixed on the locket. Throughout the day, she found reasons to touch her pocket, reassuring herself it was still there. Each time guilt and curiosity battled within her as she prepared to leave that evening. Robert Harrington appeared in the kitchen. Unlike Eleanor, he had always acknowledged the staff as people. Heading home, Maria. It's starting to snow. Do you need a car? No, thank you, Mr. Harrington. The bus stop is close. He nodded, then frowned slightly, his eyes dropping to her pocket where her hand rested protectively. For a terrifying moment, Maria thought he would mention the locket. Instead, he simply said, 15 years. Hard to believe, isn't it? Time passes so quickly. There was something wistful in his voice. Something that made Maria wonder if he, too, carried secrets. As Maria stepped into the snowy evening, the locket felt like it was pulling her back toward the mansion. But she continued walking, knowing that whatever truth it held might change everything. Maria's apartment welcomed her with familiar scents of yesterday's eras. Con Polo and the lavender air freshener Miguel had given her for Christmas. It was small 2 bedrooms, a combined living room and kitchen. Walls adorned with Miguel's achievements and photos of her late mother, but it was hers. Paid for with years of dawn-to-dusk labor. She hung her coat, set her purse on the counter, and finally allowed herself to remove the locket from her pocket. Under the harsh kitchen light, the silver appeared more tarnished than it had in the dim light of the Harrington mansion. Maria grabbed a soft cloth and gently rubbed the surface, revealing intricate engravings, partially hidden beneath years of neglect. The locket opened with a soft click. The photograph inside was small, but clear enough, a young woman with Maria's high cheekbones and deep-set eyes, smiling softly at the camera. Maria recognized her immediately. Her mother Alina, decades younger than in any photo Maria possessed. Mama, she whispered, touching the image gently. What weren't you telling me? On her deathbed 3 years ago, Alina had clutched Maria's hand with surprising strength. Me, hey Josh, she had said, her voice barely audible. There are things about your beginning. A baby given to a wealthy family, ... Forgive me. Before Maria could ask what she meant, Alina had slipped away, taking her secrets with her. Maria had assumed it was the morphine talking, or perhaps a confused memory of someone else's story. But now, ... She turned the locket over and noticed something she'd missed earlier. A date etched in tiny numbers on the back. April 17, 1978. Her birth date. Maria's hands trembled as she reached for her phone and dialed her cousin Lucia, her mother's niece and the only remaining connection to her family's past. Lucia, it's Maria. I need to ask you something about my mother. Maria, it's late. Is everything okay? I found something today, at work. A locket with my mother's picture inside, and my birth date on the back. Silence filled the line before Lucia responded. What exactly do you want to know? Before my mother died, she said something about a baby given to a wealthy family. Did she ever mention anything like that to you? Lucia sighed heavily. Tia Alina made us promise never to speak of it, but I suppose now, ... Her voice trailed off. Please Lucia, I need to know. Before she met your father, your mother was involved with the son of a prominent family. She became pregnant. The family wanted no scandal, so they paid her to disappear. That's all I know. Did she ever mention the family's name? No, but she kept newspaper clippings about them. Society pages, charity events. I thought it was strange, but she never explained. Maria's mind raced. The baby, did she give it up? That's what makes no sense, Maria. She always said the baby died at birth. That's why I never connected it to you. You came later, after she married your father. Maria's world tilted. If the baby died, who was she? And why did she have her mother's eyes, her smile? I have to go, Lucia, thank you. After hanging up, Maria opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing. Harrington Family History, Boston. Pages of results appeared. News articles about Robert Harrington Sr.'s banking empire, society announcements of Robert Jr.'s marriage to Eleanor Whitmore in 1979, charity galas, business acquisitions, She clicked on an article about the Harrington Foundation's establishment. The photograph accompanying the article showed a younger Robert and Eleanor at the foundation's first gala in 1985. Around Eleanor's neck hung a familiar silver locket. Maria zoomed in on the image, her breath catching. It was the same locket now sitting on her kitchen table. She continued searching, finding a birth announcement for Catherine Harrington in 1993, 15 years younger than Maria. If Robert was her father, Catherine would be her half-sister. The thought was too overwhelming. Maria closed the laptop and walked to the window, watching snow continue to fall. For 15 years, she had moved invisibly through the Harringtons' lives, dusting their photographs, washing their clothes, preparing their meals. Had they known who she was all along? Had her presence in their home been charity or cruelty? Her phone buzzed with a text from Miguel Colwyn-Ure. Olmase for Mama. Love you, Miguel. What would this mean for him? Would this revelation open doors or simply create pain? Maria touched the locket again, tracing the inscription with her fingertip. To my beloved daughter, never forgotten. Who had given it to? Whom and how had it ended up hidden beneath a dresser? She should return it tomorrow. Pretend she never found it. Continue her life as it had been. Safe, predictable. But as she stared at her mother's young face in the photograph, Maria knew she had already crossed a threshold. The truth, whatever it was, had been waiting for her for 45 years. It would not wait any longer. She picked up the phone to call Miguel, then set it down again. Not yet. Not until she knew more. Instead, she fastened the locket around her neck, feeling its weight against her skin. Tomorrow, she would return to the Harrington mansion, not just as their cleaning lady, but as a woman in search of her past. Outside, the snow continued falling, covering the city in a blank white slate, as if preparing it for a new story to be written. Robert Harrington stood at his office window, watching snow blanket the Boston skyline. At 68, he still commanded the respect of the financial world. Though these days he felt the weight of his years more than he cared to admit. The slight pressure in his chest had returned a warning he'd been ignoring for months. Behind him, the door opened without a knock. Only Eleanor entered his office that way. The invitations for the foundation gala went out today, she said, placing a sample on his desk. 50 years, Robert, your father would have been proud. Robert didn't turn, would he, I wonder? The Harrington Foundation had been established by his father, ostensibly for charitable purposes. But Robert had always suspected it was more about tax benefits and social standing than genuine philanthropy. He'd spent decades trying to transform it into something meaningful. You're in one of your moods, Eleanor observed, her voice cooler. The cardiologist called. You missed your appointment yesterday. I was busy, too busy for your heart, Catherine, and I need you healthy for the gala. It's the social event of the season. Robert finally turned, studying his wife of 46 years. Eleanor at 65 remained striking, silver hair perfectly styled, posture impeccable, her face a masterpiece of subtle cosmetic maintenance. The beautiful debutante he'd married had hardened over the decades into someone he sometimes barely recognized. Is that all we are now, Eleanor? Social events and appearances. She sighed with practiced patience. Don't start, Robert. Not with everything happening. The board meeting tomorrow, the foundation audit, Catherine's partnership announcement. Catherine's unhappy, Robert interrupted. Eleanor's expression tightened. Catherine is succeeding. That's what matters. As if summoned, their daughter appeared in the doorway. At 30, Catherine possessed her mother's beauty and her father's thoughtful eyes. Her tailored suit and carefully neutral expression had become her armor. I can hear you talking about me, she said. I wish you wouldn't. Eleanor brightened artificially. Darling, I was just telling your father about your partnership announcement at the gala. The youngest female partner in the firm's history. Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. If they approve it, nothing's certain yet. Of course they'll approve it. You're a Harrington. The familiar refrain hung in the air. You're a Harrington. The family motto, both blessing and burden. Dad, you look tired, Catherine said, changing the subject. Are you feeling all right? Just work, Robert lied, ignoring the tightness in his chest. Nothing serious. Catherine didn't seem convinced but didn't press. I saw Maria leaving earlier. She seemed upset. Eleanor waved dismissively. The help always has some drama. That's why we pay them to handle our problems, not bring theirs to work. She's been with us 15 years, Mother, Catherine pointed out. She's hardly the help. Loyalty doesn't change what she is, Eleanor replied. Besides, good help is hard to find these days. Of course we keep her on. Robert watched the exchange with growing discomfort. Eleanor had always been particular about maintaining class boundaries, but her attitude toward Maria had always seemed unusually pointed. I'm going to my room, Catherine said. I have briefs to review before tomorrow. As she left, Robert noticed something he hadn't seen in years: Eleanor's instinctive reach for her neck, where the locket had hung for decades. Something wrong? He asked. No, she said too quickly. Just habit. I should check on dinner arrangements. When she was gone, Robert moved to his desk and opened the bottom drawer. Behind folders of financial documents was a small velvet box. Inside lay a pair of silver earrings that matched the locket, the complete set he had given Eleanor when they married. She had stopped wearing the locket years ago, claiming the clasp was broken, but he knew she kept it in her jewelry box. Org had, until recently. Robert closed the box and returned it to its hiding place. Then he unlocked a different drawer and removed a faded photograph, a young woman with dark eyes and a gentle smile, holding a newborn baby. He hadn't looked at it in years, but tonight, something compelled him. On the back was written, Alina and Maria, April 1978. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. Board presentation files attached for your review. Robert slipped the photograph back into the drawer and locked it. There was work to be done, appearances to maintain. The Harrington legacy demanded nothing less. But as he turned to his computer, the pressure in his chest intensified. Something was changing in his carefully constructed world. He could feel it, like the snow accumulating outside, quiet but inexorable, covering everything in white. Maria arrived at the Harrington mansion earlier than usual the next morning. The locket concealed beneath her uniform. She had barely slept, her mind racing between possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The logical part of her insisted she was imagining connections where none existed. Yet the photograph in the locket, her mother's unmistakable face, suggested otherwise. She would return it today, place it back where she found it, and forget the whole thing. The house was quiet as she let herself in through the service entrance. She moved through the kitchen, gathering cleaning supplies, when voices from Robert's study caught her attention. She has to be dealt with, Robert. Eleanor's voice, sharp with urgency. Lower your voice, Robert replied. This isn't how I wanted to handle it. You've had 45 years to handle it your way. Now we have no choice. She deserves to know the truth. The truth. Eleanor laughed bitterly. Which version? Yours? Mine? Your father's? There are too many versions of the truth in this family. Maria froze, the cleaning caddy heavy in her hands. Were they talking about her, or Catherine? I saw her looking at the photographs yesterday, Eleanor continued. The way she was touching her pocket. She found something, Robert. I know it. And if she did? Robert's voice sounded tired. Maybe it's time. Time to destroy everything we've built. Everything I've sacrificed for. Their voices faded as they moved deeper into the study. Maria stood paralyzed, her heart hammering. She should walk away, pretend she hadn't heard anything. Instead, she found herself moving toward the master bedroom, toward the Victorian dresser, where she'd found the locket. The bedroom door opened before she reached it. Eleanor stood there, her silk robe belted tightly around her thin frame, her expression hardening when she saw Maria. You're early today, she said, her gaze sharp. Yes, Mrs. Harrington. I wanted to start on the chandeliers before the dinner. Preparations tonight. Eleanor studied her with cold calculation. There have been items missing from my room, Maria. Small things. A silver letter opener. A crystal perfume bottle. Now my locket. Maria felt heat rise in her face. I haven't taken anything, Mrs. Harrington. No. Then you won't mind if I check your bag before you leave today. The casual cruelty of the accusation stung. 15 years of impeccable service, and Eleanor could reduce her to a thief with a few words. Of course not, Maria managed to say though. Her voice shook slightly. I have nothing to hide. Eleanor smiled thinly. We'll see. Now, the bathrooms need attention before our guests arrive. The dismissal was clear. As Eleanor walked away, Maria noticed her hand go instinctively to her neck, just as Robert had described, searching for something no longer there. Throughout the morning, Maria worked mechanically, her mind elsewhere. The locket felt heavier, with each passing hour, as if it were trying to pull her toward some inevitable confrontation. During her lunch break, she sat alone in the staff alcove, examining the photograph of her mother again. What connection did Alina have to the Harringtons? And why had she never spoken of it? Maria, she looked up, startled to find Robert Harrington standing in the doorway. She quickly closed the locket, but not before he glimpsed the chain slipping beneath her uniform. Instead of the accusation she expected, his face showed something like resignation. Sir, I was just. He held up a hand. May I sit? Maria nodded, unnerved by this break in routine. In 15 years, Robert had never joined her for lunch. He lowered himself into the chair across from her, wincing slightly. Up close, Maria could see the fatigue in his face, the slight grayish tint to his skin that hadn't been there even a few months ago. Maria, he began, then paused. Your full name, it's Maria Elena Rodriguez, isn't it? The question caught her off guard. Yes, sir. After my mother, Elena. Robert nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. I thought so. He seemed to be searching for words. Maria, I'd like to speak with you privately tomorrow. There are things you should know about the locket. The words escaped before she could stop them. A sad smile crossed his face. So you did find it. His gaze dropped to where the chain disappeared beneath her collar. It belongs to you more than anyone, I suppose. Before Maria could respond, Catherine appeared in the doorway. Dad, the car's here for your meeting. Robert stood with visible effort. Tomorrow, Maria, my study, 10 o'clock. After he left, Catherine lingered, her expression curious. Is everything all right? Dad seems different today. Just discussing household matters, Miss Catherine. Catherine looked unconvinced but didn't press. As she turned to leave, she added, by the way, Maria, whatever my mother said to you this morning, I apologize. She's been on edge lately. The unexpected kindness left Maria speechless. She managed a nod before Catherine disappeared down the hallway alone again. Maria touched the locket beneath her uniform. Tomorrow at 10, whatever truth it held would finally be revealed. She just had to make it through one more day of pretending nothing had changed. Maria arrived at the Harrington mansion at 9:30 the next morning, her stomach tight with anticipation. She had called Miguel the night before, careful to keep her voice steady as they discussed his classes and upcoming exams. She hadn't mentioned the locket or Robert's request to meet. Some instinct told her to wait until she knew more. The house was unusually quiet. Typically, Eleanor would be issuing instructions for the day or reviewing social correspondence in the morning room. Today the space felt abandoned. Maria made her way to Robert's study, pausing outside the heavy oak door. Should she wait until exactly 10? Go in and prepare the room? The protocols that had governed her 15 years in this house suddenly seemed inadequate. She decided to wait in the study. If nothing else, she could straighten the bookshelves or ensure fresh water was available for their meeting. The study door was unlocked. Inside, afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating walls of leather-bound books and the massive mahogany desk that had once belonged to Robert's father. Family photographs lined the credenza behind the desk. Robert and Eleanor's wedding, Catherine's christening, graduation ceremonies, holiday gatherings. Maria moved closer to examine them. In one of the older photos, a formal portrait from what appeared to be the early 1980s, Eleanor wore the silver locket. Maria touched the matching piece around her neck, wondering at the connection. A smaller frame caught her eye. Unlike the others, it wasn't prominently displayed but tucked partially behind a larger family portrait. Maria carefully moved the larger frame to reveal a photograph of a much younger Robert with a dark-haired woman who was unmistakably her mother. The shock of it froze her in place. There was no mistaking Elena's face, the same face that looked back at Maria from her own mirror each morning, only younger and unmarked by the hardships that would later define her. She stood close to Robert, their expressions capturing something intimate and unguarded. "My God," Maria whispered. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 10, startling her. She quickly replaced the photographs as she'd found them, and moved away from the desk, her mind reeling. Whatever she had expected to discover today, seeing evidence of her mother's connection to Robert Harrington, made the abstract suddenly, jarringly real. Minutes passed. 10:15, 10:30. Robert didn't appear at 10:45. Maria heard rapid footsteps in the hallway. Catherine burst into the study, her face pale and hair disheveled, so unlike her usual composed self that Maria immediately knew something was wrong. "Maria, you're here." Catherine seemed momentarily confused by her presence. "Have you seen my mother?" "No, Miss Catherine. I was waiting for your father. We had a meeting scheduled." Catherine ran a hand through her hair, a gesture so like Robert's that Maria wondered how she'd never noticed the similarity before. "Dad collapsed at his board meeting. They've taken him to Massachusetts General. Possible heart attack." The words hit Maria like physical blows. "Is he? I don't know yet. I'm going there now." Catherine grabbed her father's spare reading glasses from the desk drawer, a strangely intimate gesture. "If my mother returns, tell her where I've gone." After Catherine left, Maria stood alone in the study, uncertain what to do. The meeting that might have answered her questions would not happen today, perhaps not ever. If Robert's condition was as serious as it sounded, she should continue with her duties, pretend this was just another day. Instead, she found herself reaching for her coat and purse. Before she could reconsider, she was in a taxi headed toward Massachusetts General Hospital. The hospital's imposing entrance loomed before her, people streaming in and out with the focused intensity of places where life and death balanced on a knife's edge. Maria hesitated at the threshold. What right did she have to be here? She wasn't family, at least, not officially, yet something pulled her forward. If Robert Harrington was indeed connected to her past, to her mother, she needed to know. And if today might be her last chance to learn the truth. The hospital's central information desk directed her to the cardiac unit on the 4th floor. As the elevator ascended, Maria touched the locket beneath her blouse, drawing strength from its solid presence. The cardiac waiting room was a study in muted anxiety-hushed conversations. The rhythmic tapping of fingers on phones, the occasional sound of someone clearing a throat thick with unspent tears. Maria spotted Catherine immediately, standing by the window, her back rigid as she spoke quietly into her phone. "I've called 3 times, Mother. Where are you? Dad needs you here." A few feet away sat a distinguished older man in an expensive suit, a business associate, perhaps, or family friend. No sign of Eleanor. Maria hung back, suddenly aware of her presumption in coming here. She was about to retreat when Catherine ended her call and turned, spotting her immediately. "Maria?" Confusion, then something like relief crossed her face. "Did my mother send you?" "No, Miss Catherine. I was concerned about your father." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "That's kind of you." She hesitated, then added, "Dad's in surgery. A blocked artery. They're putting in a stent. I'm sorry. I shouldn't intrude on a family matter." "No, stay please." The request sounded genuine. "Mother's still not answering her phone. And She didn't finish the sentence, but Maria understood. No one should face such moments alone. They sat together in awkward silence until a doctor appeared, asking for the Harrington family. Catherine stood immediately. "That's me. My mother is on her way." Maria remained seated as Catherine followed the doctor to a consultation room. Through the glass partition, she could see Catherine nodding as the doctor spoke, her composed expression betrayed only by the white-knuckled grip on her handbag. When Catherine returned, her face showed cautious relief. "He's stable. They caught it before major damage occurred. He'll need to stay for observation, but they expect a full recovery." "Thank God," Maria said sincerely. The elevator doors opened, and Eleanor Harrington emerged, immaculately dressed. As always, though her face showed signs of hastily applied makeup, her gaze swept the waiting room, landing first on Catherine, then freezing when she spotted Maria. For a moment, naked, emotion, shock, fear, Anger crossed her face before her. Social mask slammed back into place. What is she doing here? Eleanor asked Catherine, her voice carrying clearly across the room. Before Catherine could answer, Eleanor's gaze dropped to Maria's neck, where the chain of the locket was visible above her collar. The blood drained from Eleanor's face. Where did you get that? She demanded, crossing the room with surprising speed. That's mine, you stole it from my room. Mother, stop, Catherine said, stepping between them. This isn't the place. But Eleanor reached past her daughter, her hand closing around the locket chain at Maria's neck, yanking it hard enough that the clasp broke. Thief, she hissed, the locket now clutched in her fist. A security guard approached rapidly. Is there a problem here, ladies? Yes, Eleanor said, her voice shaking with fury. This woman stole from my home. She's not family. She has no right to be here. Maria stood motionless, shocked by the violence of Eleanor's reaction. As the locket disappeared into Eleanor's hand, she felt as if a vital connection had been severed. The security guard turned to Maria. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Wait, Catherine interrupted. She turned to the admissions desk. Can you check something for me? My father's blood type, it should be in his records. The confused nurse looked at the computer. Mr. Harrington is AB negative. Very rare. Catherine turned to Maria. And yours? Maria blinked, unsure why this mattered. Abnegate. Eleanor made a small sound, half gasp, half moan. Her hand opened reflexively, and the locket fell to the floor, popping open to reveal Elena's photograph. She was never supposed to know, Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible. Robert promised me never. The hospital corridors seemed to contract around them as Eleanor's words hung in the air. The security guard, sensing the shift from potential theft to personal drama, quietly retreated. Catherine knelt to retrieve the fallen locket, staring at the photograph inside. Mom, she said slowly, who is this woman? Eleanor's perfect posture crumbled. She sank into a nearby chair, her face ashen. Not here, Catherine, not like this. Maria stood frozen, the broken chain still dangling from her neck. The nurse behind the desk watched with undisguised interest. Other waiting room occupants pretended not to stare. I should go, Maria finally said, her voice barely audible. No, Catherine's response was immediate and surprisingly firm. She turned to her mother. Maria stays. I want answers, and I want them now. A doctor appeared at the end of the corridor. Mrs. Harrington, your husband is asking for you. Eleanor rose, shakily. We'll discuss this at home. Mom, at home. Catherine, Eleanor straightened her jacket with trembling hands, and not in front of the staff. Her gaze flicked dismissively toward Maria before she followed the doctor. Catherine watched her mother disappear down the corridor, then turned to Maria, the locket still in her hand. I'm sorry about that, she said, sounding genuinely apologetic. I've never seen her lose control like that. Maria couldn't find words to respond. The sequence of events, Robert's collapse, Eleanor's reaction to the locket, the matching blood type had left her mind spinning. Catherine studied the photograph in the locket. Who is she? The woman in the picture. My mother, Maria replied. Elena Rodriguez. Something flickered across Catherine's face. Recognition. Realization. She looked from the photograph to Maria's face, seeing the resemblance clearly for the first time. And you found this at our house, under my mother's dresser? Maria nodded. I shouldn't have taken it. I was going to return it. But then I saw my mother's picture inside, and you wanted answers, Catherine finished. I understand. She hesitated. When were you born, Maria? April 17, 1978. Catherine's intake of breath was sharp. My parents were married in June 1979. She turned the locket over, noticing the date engraved on the back. Her eyes widened. Does this mean what I think it means? Before Maria could respond, the elevator doors opened, and Miguel stepped out, scanning the waiting room anxiously. He spotted Maria and rushed over. Mama, I got your text about Mr. Harrington. Are you okay? Maria embraced her son, drawing comfort from his solid presence. I'm fine, Oh. Miguel pulled back, noticing Catherine. His expression turned wary. Miss Harrington, you know each other? Maria asked, surprised. Miguel interned at my law firm last summer, Catherine explained, studying him with new interest. Top of his class at Boston University Law. Was impressed. Miguel shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I should get my mother home. Wait. Catherine looked between them, her gaze lingering on Miguel's features, the set of his jaw, the shape of his eyes, so reminiscent of her father's. I think we all need to talk. About what? Miguel asked, his protective instinct evident. Catherine held up the locket. About this, and what it might mean for all of us. Before she could elaborate, Eleanor returned, her social mask firmly back in place despite her reddened eyes. Catherine, your father is asking for you. Her gaze hardened. When she saw Miguel. This is becoming a circus. I won't have family matters discussed in public. Family matters, Catherine repeated, emphasizing each word. That's exactly what we need to discuss, isn't it, Mother? Eleanor flinched. Catherine, please, no more secrets, Catherine insisted. Dad almost died today. Life is too short for lies. Eleanor looked defeated. Fine, but not here. She turned to Maria and Miguel. Come to the house tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. The invitation or command delivered. Eleanor walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the hospital floor. Catherine handed the locket to Maria. I'm sorry about all this. Whatever the truth is, you deserve to know it. As Catherine followed her mother, Miguel turned to Maria, his expression concerned. Mama, what's going on? What was that about? Maria stared at the locket in her palm, at her mother's young face smiling up at her. I think, she said slowly, I'm about to learn who I really am. Outside the hospital, snow had begun to fall again, soft flakes melting as they touched the warm ground. Maria and Miguel walked in silence toward the subway station, each lost in thought. Do you think Mr. Harrington is my grandfather? Miguel finally asked, his voice quiet. The question startled Maria. She'd been so focused on what this might mean for her that she hadn't fully processed the implications for her son. I don't know, mijo, but if what I suspect is true, then I've been cleaning the home of my own family for 15 years, she finished silently. The thought brought no satisfaction, only a complex tangle of emotions she couldn't begin to unravel. Whatever we learn tomorrow, Miguel said, taking her hand, nothing changes who we are to each other. Maria squeezed his hand gratefully. In the midst of all this uncertainty, his presence was the one constant she could rely on. As they descended into the subway station, Maria glanced back at the hospital's illuminated windows, wondering which one belonged to Robert Harrington. Man who might be her father, who had almost taken his secrets to the grave. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. After 45 years of not knowing, she had less than 24 hours to prepare for a truth that would change everything. Maria couldn't sleep. The apartment felt too small, the walls closing in with each passing hour. At 3 in the morning, she gave up trying and moved to the living room, where boxes of her mother's belongings had been stored since her death. She hadn't been able to part with Elena's things, the colorful scarves she'd loved, the collection of small ceramic birds, the worn leather Bible with pressed flowers between its pages. Now, Maria searched through these remnants with new purpose, looking for anything that might confirm or deny her suspicions, before she faced the HARRINGTONS dot in the bottom of the third box, beneath winter sweaters that still carried traces of her mother's rose-scented perfume. Maria found a small wooden chest she'd never opened. It had always been locked, the key missing, and she'd respected her mother's privacy even after death. Tonight that lock stood between her and the truth she needed. Forgive me, Mama, she whispered, using a kitchen knife to force the aged mechanism. It gave way with surprising ease, as if it had been waiting all these years for this moment. Inside lay a worn leather journal, a small stack of letters bound with faded ribbon, and several newspaper clippings yellowed with age. Maria's hands trembled as she lifted the journal, recognizing her mother's elegant handwriting on the first page. My Heart's Truth, 1977. Miguel appeared in the doorway, his hair rumpled from sleep. Mama, what are you doing? I found my mother's journal, Maria said, her voice hushed with reverence. From before I was born, Miguel joined her on the floor, helping her sort through the contents of the box. Together, they spread the newspaper. Clippings across the coffee table. Headlines mentioned the Harrington family charity galas, business mergers, society announcements. One from 1978 showed a young Robert Harrington at his father's side at a bank opening. "He looks like you," Miguel observed quietly, pointing to Robert's smile. Maria couldn't deny the resemblance. The same smile looked back at her from Miguel's face, 3 generations sharing an unmistakable feature. She opened the journal with careful fingers, beginning to read by the soft light of the table lamp. Her mother's words flowed across the pages in both English and Spanish, chronicling her life as a young immigrant working as a housekeeper for wealthy Boston families. Then in an entry from March 1977, "Today I met him again, Robert H. His father's house has coldness wrapped in luxury, but Robert's eyes hold kindness. He asked about my family in San Juan, remembered details from our conversation last week. Mrs. Cabot says, I should be careful that the son of the house is not for girls like me. But when he speaks to me, I forget all the reasons why this cannot be." The entries continued, detailing a secret romance that blossomed over stolen moments. Robert visiting the park where Alina took her employer's children. Alina waiting after hours when Robert returned from business trips. A love conducted in shadows, always aware of the gulf between their worlds. September 1977. I am pregnant. When I told Robert, he held me and promised we would find a way. He wants to tell his father, to stand against the expectations that have ruled his life. He speaks of marriage, of a future together. I want to believe him. October 1977. Robert's father knows everything. Today he came to me alone, offering money, so much money to disappear from Robert's life. I refused. This child is love made real. How could I surrender that for any price? November 1977. Robert was sent to London on business. His father says he will not return for months, perhaps a year. The letters I sent come back unopened. The telephone number is changed. I am alone with our growing child and a fear that burrows deeper each day. The entries grew more desperate as Elena's pregnancy progressed, detailing her dismissal from her job, her struggle to find new work, the increasingly dire financial situation. Then, a gap of several months, when the entries resumed in April 1978. Maria's heart contracted at the change in her mother's handwriting, no longer flowing and elegant, but jagged with grief. They tell me my baby girl died at birth. A rare complication, the doctor said. They would not let me see her body, claiming it would be too distressing in my condition. Robert's father arranged everything, the hospital, the private room, the quiet burial. His secretary brought papers for me to sign and an envelope of cash. The price of my silence, though no one called it that. But in my dreams, I hear her crying. A mother knows her child's voice, even when she has never heard awake. I wake, reaching for her, my arms aching with emptiness. If she lives, where is my daughter? If she lives, who has claimed her as their own? Maria couldn't continue reading, tears blurring her vision. Miguel gently took the journal, scanning the remaining entries. There's more, Mama, he said quietly. About her meeting my father, about you. Maria looked up in confusion. But if I was the baby she lost, ... Listen to this entry from 1980. Miguel read. Today I held my daughter for the first time. Maria Elena named for me and my mother. Carlos says she has my eyes, my smile. He doesn't know how I searched for my first child in every nursery, every playground. He doesn't know that when I rock Maria to sleep, I sometimes imagine I am comforting 2 babies, not 1. My heart has learned to love deeply again, but it has never stopped searching. Maria took the journal back, turning to the final pages, the last entry dated just weeks before Elena's death. Read, Maria works in a grand house, now one of those Beacon Hill mansions where families like the Harringtons live. She doesn't know why I wept when she told me. Some secrets are too heavy to pass to our children, but I wondered, does she dust his photographs? Does she pass him in hallways? This man who might have been her father, would his blood recognize hers if they stood in the same room? These are questions I will take to my grave, along with my guilt for never telling her the truth. Maria closed the journal, her mind reeling. All these years, she whispered. She knew where I worked. She must have suspected. but she never said anything, Miguel pointed out. Why Maria had no answer. But as dawn began to break outside their windows, she knew one thing with certainty. Elena Rodriguez had given birth to a daughter. In April 1970, a daughter she was told had died. And now, 45 years later, that same daughter was preparing to confront the family who had orchestrated one of the cruelest deceptions imaginable. She returned the journal to the wooden chest, along with the letters she didn't yet have the strength to read. Whatever happened at the Harrington mansion today, she would face it with her mother's truth to guide her. The Harrington mansion loomed before Maria and Miguel, its granite facade stern against the morning sky. They stood at the rotund gates, Maria clutching her mother's journal like a shield. We don't have to do this, Miguel said quietly. We could walk away. Maria shook her head. I've walked away from too many things in my life, Oh, not this time. The security guard recognized Maria and buzzed them through without question. As they approached the front entrance the service door Maria had used for 15 years, Catherine opened the door before they could knock. Thank you for coming, she said, her typical composure replaced by visible tension. There's been a change of plans. My father insisted on coming home this morning. Against medical advice, Maria's heart sank. If this is a bad time, no, Catherine interrupted. He's the one who insisted you come. He's waiting in the library. She led them through the grand foyer, past rooms Maria had cleaned countless times but never entered as a guest. The experience was disorienting, like walking through a familiar dream where everything was slightly altered. The library doors stood open. Inside, Robert Harrington sat in a wingback chair near the fireplace, looking smaller and frailer than Maria remembered. A silver-haired man in an expensive suit stood nearby, arranging papers on a side table. Eleanor paced by the windows, stopping abruptly when she saw Maria and Miguel. Her face betrayed nothing, but her knuckles whitened around her glass of amber liquid scotch at 10 in the morning. Maria, Robert said, his voice weaker but his eyes alert. And this must be your son, Miguel? Yes, sir, Miguel replied, his posture straightening instinctively. Robert studied him with undisguised interest. Catherine tells me you're in law school, top of your class. Second, actually, Miguel corrected. Emily Chen is first. A smile touched Robert's pale lips. Accurate and honest. Good qualities in a lawyer. Eleanor made a small, dismissive sound. Robert, is this really necessary? You should be resting. I've rested enough, Robert replied, an edge entering his voice. Too many years of silence. Too many secrets. He gestured to the silver-haired man. This is James Whitaker, my attorney and oldest friend. He's here as a witness. The attorney nodded politely. Mrs. Rodriguez, Mr. Rodriguez. Now, Robert continued. Before we begin, I want to make something clear. What I'm about to say doesn't obligate anyone to anything. You're free to walk out that door and never look back. Maria stepped forward, placing her mother's journal on the table between them. I found this last night. My mother's journal from 1977 and 1978. She wrote about you, Mr. Harrington. About your relationship. About her pregnancy. Robert's face softened with something like grief. Alina kept a journal. May I, Robert? Eleanor warned sharply. He ignored her, reaching for the journal with trembling hands. I haven't seen her handwriting in 45 years. She believed her baby died at birth, Maria continued, her voice steady despite the emotion churning inside her. A baby girl born in April 1978, my birthday. Robert closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they glistened with unshed tears. Yes, that's what she was told. What we were both told. But it wasn't true. I think I've heard enough, Eleanor snapped, moving toward the door. Sit down, Eleanor, Robert said, his tone leaving no room for argument. You've orchestrated enough of this story. You won't control its ending too. To Maria's surprise, Eleanor obeyed, sinking into a chair with uncharacteristic defeat. Maria, Robert said, turning back to her. I loved your mother. We planned to marry. Consequences be damned. But my father, he shook his head. My father was a powerful man who believed in maintaining the Harrington legacy above all else. When he learned about Elena's pregnancy, he acted decisively. He paid her to disappear, Maria said. At first, yes. When she refused, he took more drastic measures. He sent me to London on an extended assignment, changed our phone numbers, intercepted our letters. Then he used his connections to arrange a private hospital for Elena's delivery. Robert's voice grew strained. I was told the baby our daughter died from complications, that Elena had been compensated and wanted no further contact. Catherine had moved to stand behind her father's chair, her hand on his shoulder. And you believed him? Without question. Robert's face showed his shame. I was young, grief-stricken, and still under my father's thumb. By the time I returned to Boston, Elena was gone. No forwarding address, no way to find her. But you did. Nothing, Maria said, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. For 45 years. I searched for her, Robert insisted. For years. But she'd left Boston, and in those days, finding someone who didn't want to be found, he stopped, collecting himself. Eventually, I met Eleanor. Life moved forward. Catherine was born, but I never forgot. Then I appeared at your door 15 years ago, Maria said. Didn't you recognize my name? My face? The name? Yes. It caught my attention immediately. But you are introduced as Maria Rodriguez, a common enough name. I convinced myself it was coincidence. He gestured to his attorney. But I asked James to look into it, discreetly. The attorney cleared his throat. I traced your birth certificate, Mrs. Rodriguez. The original listed father, unknown. Mother Elena Rodriguez. But there were irregularities, hospital records that didn't quite match. Paperwork filed by a lawyer known to work for Harrington Sr. You knew, Maria whispered. All these years, you knew who I was. I suspected, Robert corrected. But I had no proof. And by then, you had built your own life. I had no right to disrupt it with maybes and might have beens. So you hired me to clean your house. The bitterness Maria had held at bay spilled into her words. Was that your idea of atonement? Robert flinched. It was wrong, all of it. I can't change the past, Maria. But I can acknowledge the truth now. He turned to his attorney. James, the papers. The attorney handed Robert a document. I've made some amendments to my will, Robert explained. Legally recognizing you as my daughter, Maria Elena Rodriguez, entitled to an equal share of my estate. Alongside Catherine, Eleanor made a strangled sound. Robert, you can't. It's done, Eleanor. He held the document out to Maria. This changes nothing about who you are, or the life you've built. It simply acknowledges what should have been recognized 45 years ago. Maria stared at the document but made no move to take it. I don't want your money, Mr. Harrington. I understand, but this isn't about money. It's about truth, about finally doing what's right. His eyes moved to Miguel. And about acknowledging my grandson, if he'll permit it. Miguel had remained silent throughout the exchange, his lawyer's mind processing each revelation. Now he stepped forward, with respect. Sir, why now? Why after a heart attack and not years ago? Robert smiled sadly. Nothing clarifies priorities like facing your mortality, young man. I've spent decades building a legacy based on half-truths and compromises. I'd like my remaining time to be more honest. He held out his hand to Maria once more, the will resting in his palm like an offering. Please, not for me, but for Elena. For the truth she never knew. Maria hesitated, then slowly reached for the document. As her fingers touched the paper, Robert's other hand closed over hers. I should have fought harder, he said, his voice breaking. For Elena, for you. It's my greatest regret. Before Maria could respond, Robert's face contorted in pain. His hand clutched at his chest as he slumped sideways in his chair. Dad, Catherine cried, reaching for him. Call 911. The attorney shouted, rushing to Robert's side as chaos erupted around them. Maria stood frozen, the will clutched in her hand, watching the father she never knew slip away before she'd had the chance to truly find him. The next 72 hours passed in a blur. Robert survived his second cardiac event, but remained in intensive care, his condition stabilized but serious. The doctor spoke in careful terms about reduced heart function, medication regimens, and lifestyle changes, the language of a life fundamentally altered. Maria continued working at the mansion, unable to simply abandon her duties despite the seismic shift in her relationship to the household. The familiar routines, dusting bookshelves, polishing silver, changing linens provided an anchor amid the emotional storm. But now, as she moved through rooms she'd cleaned for 15 years, every object seemed to hold new significance. The antique clock in the foyer that she'd carefully wound each Monday had it belonged to the grandfather who had orchestrated her separation from her mother. The family photographs she'd dusted countless times, should she have recognized herself in those features? Catherine had taken charge in her father's absence, working remotely from the mansion's study and coordinating with the family's business managers. She made a point of seeking Maria out each day, providing updates on Robert's condition with a directness that suggested she was actively trying to bridge the chasm between them. The doctors say he's responding well to the new medication, she told Maria on the third morning, finding her arranging fresh flowers in the dining room. He's asking about you. Maria's hands stilled on the lilies. I'm not sure what to say. To him? I don't think any of us know what to say, Catherine admitted. This isn't exactly covered in etiquette books. How to welcome the half-sister you never knew you had. The unexpected touch of humor surprised a small laugh from Maria. No, I suppose not. Catherine hesitated. Would you join me for coffee? Not as she gestured vaguely at Maria's uniform, but just as people. 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other at the kitchen table, not the formal dining room where the family took their meals, but the warm, functional space where Maria had eaten countless solitary lunches over the years. I've been thinking about coincidences, Catherine said, wrapping her hands around her mug. All these years, you've been here, in our home. Did you never suspect? Maria shook her head. Why would I? My mother never spoke of Robert Harrington. I believed my father was Carlos Rodriguez, the man who raised me until I was 12. What happened to him? He left, returned to Puerto Rico, started a new family. Maria shrugged, an old pain long dulled by time. My mother never remarried. And yet she let you work here, Catherine mused, knowing who my father was. According to her journal, she suspected but wasn't certain. Robert Harrington is hardly the only wealthy man in Boston. They sipped their coffee in silence for a moment, each lost in private thoughts. Miguel seems remarkable, Catherine finally said. I remember him from the internship. Quiet, brilliant, incredibly hardworking. Everyone was impressed. Pride warmed Maria's voice. He's always been determined. Even as a child, he knew exactly what he wanted and how to get there. Harrington trait, Catherine said with a small smile. Dad built his first investment portfolio. At 14, the comparison hung between them, acknowledgement of the bloodline they now knew they shared. The kitchen door swung open, and Eleanor entered, stopping short at the sight of them. In the days since Robert's second collapse, she had moved through the house like a ghost, appearing only at mealtimes before retreating to her rooms. Catherine, she said, her voice carefully neutral. I didn't realize you had company. Maria and I were just talking, Catherine replied, a challenge in her tone. Eleanor's gaze flicked to Maria, then away. I see. She moved to the cabinet, retrieving a glass. Don't let me interrupt. The tension in the room thickened. Maria stood, smoothing her uniform. I should get back to work. No, Catherine said firmly. Stay. She turned to her mother. We need to talk about this. All of us. Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she filled her glass with water. There's nothing to discuss. Your father has made his decision. This isn't just Dad's decision. This affects all of us. Catherine's voice softened. Mom, Maria is his daughter. My sister. Miguel's grandmother is the woman Dad loved before you. Eleanor set the glass down with careful precision. And that's supposed to make me feel what, exactly? Grateful that he settled for me after his true love was conveniently removed. Mom, no. Eleanor turned to face them fully, her composure cracking. I've spent 46 years building this family, this life. I've hosted the galas, managed the household, raised you to be worthy of the Harrington name. And now I'm expected to simply accept that none of it was real, that I was always second choice. Maria found herself unexpectedly moved by the pain. In Eleanor's voice, Mrs. Harrington, I'm not here to claim anything that's yours, aren't you? Eleanor's laugh held no humor. You've already claimed my husband's heart. Now his fortune. What's next? My place in this house. Before either Maria or Catherine could respond, the doorbell rang. Catherine went to answer it, returning moments later with Miguel. He carried his laptop bag and a small duffel, looking uncertain. In the grand kitchen, Mr. Harrington's attorney called me, he explained. He asked if I could help review some documents while he's at the hospital. Eleanor's expression hardened. Already assuming family responsibilities. I see. Miguel met her gaze directly. With respect, Mrs. Harrington, I'm just trying to help. Miguel graduated top of his class in contract law, Catherine interjected. James thought he could help organize the foundation paperwork that needs Dad's signature. The simple fact that Robert's attorney had reached out to Miguel directly, acknowledging his place in family matters, seemed to wound Eleanor more deeply than any argument could have. I see, she said quietly. Well, don't let me stand in the way of the new Harrington dynasty. She walked out, her back rigid with pride. An uncomfortable silence filled the kitchen after her departure. I'm sorry, Miguel said. I should have called first. Don't apologize, Catherine assured him. Mom is ... processing. We all are. She smiled wryly. 2 weeks ago I was an only child with a perfect family pedigree. Now I have a half-sister who's been cleaning our house for 50 years and a brilliant nephew who's apparently joining the family business. I'm not. Miguel began to protest. I'm teasing, Catherine said. Mostly she studied them both. But I meant what I said to Mom. This affects all of us. We're connected now, whether any of us planned it or not. Maria looked at her son, this child she'd raised alone, who had never known his biological grandfather, standing in the kitchen of the home where she'd worked as a servant for 15 years. Two worlds colliding in ways she could never have imagined. Connected? She repeated softly. Yes, I suppose we are. Despite Robert's hospitalization, Eleanor insisted the Harrington Foundation's 50th anniversary gala proceed as planned. The invitations have been sent, the venue secured. The governor confirmed his attendance. She told Catherine over breakfast, her tone brooking no argument. Your father would want it to continue. Catherine looked skeptical. Dad almost died. Twice. I think Boston society would understand postponing. This isn't about what society understands, Eleanor replied, spreading marmalade on her toast with precise movements. It's about maintaining stability during a challenging time. The Foundation's work is too important to interrupt. What went unsaid hung in the air between them, with Robert's amended will and Maria's recognition, threatening to reshape the family structure. Eleanor was clinging to the one aspect of Harrington life she could still control. Catherine relented. Fine, but we're acknowledging Dad's absence and keeping it dignified. Of course, Eleanor agreed, then added after a slight pause, we should invite Maria and her son. Catherine's eyebrows rose in surprise. You want to invite them? They're Harringtons now, aren't they? Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes, at least according to your father's will. Later that morning, Maria found an engraved invitation on the small desk in the laundry room where she kept her schedule and supplies. The Harrington family requests the honor of your presence. It read in elegant script, followed by details for the black tie event at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. Mrs. Harrington left it for you, explained Dorothea, the Harringtons' longtime cook. She said to tell you it's not optional. Maria stared at the invitation, a mixture of emotions washing over her. In 15 years, she had never attended a Harrington social event, except as staff setting up beforehand, or cleaning after guests departed. What am I supposed to wear to something like this? She wondered aloud. Dorothea snorted. That's the least of your worries, honey. It's what they're going to say about you that should concern you. The night of the gala arrived with a crystalline December chill. Miguel picked Maria up in a rented car, handsome in a borrowed tuxedo from one of his law school classmates. You look beautiful, Mama, he said as she emerged from the apartment in a simple dark blue gown, the most expensive dress she'd ever owned, purchased that afternoon with the credit card Catherine had insisted she take. I feel ridiculous, Maria admitted, smoothing the unfamiliar fabric, like I'm playing dress up. You belong there as much as anyone, Miguel reminded her. More than most, actually. The museum's grand entrance was transformed for the evening. Floral arrangements, strategically placed lighting highlighting classical sculptures, waiters circulating with champagne flutes. Maria hesitated at the threshold, suddenly overwhelmed. Miss Rodriguez, a voice called. James Whittaker, Robert's attorney, approached with a warm smile. And Miguel, I'm glad you both came. Robert will be pleased when I tell him. How is he? Maria asked. Improving, demanding his phone and complaining about hospital food all. Good signs. He lowered his voice. He asked me to keep an eye on you tonight. Eleanor can be territorial about these events. As if summoned by her name, Eleanor appeared resplendent in a crimson gown and family diamonds. Her smile was perfectly calibrated, visible to onlookers but cold upon closer inspection. Maria, Miguel, how lovely you could join us. Her gaze swept over Maria's dress with practiced assessment. Catherine is by the Monet. I'm sure she'd be delighted to introduce you around. Before Maria could respond, Eleanor was gone, gliding toward a group of distinguished-looking guests. And so it begins, Miguel murmured. They found Catherine deep in conversation with the silver-haired couple. She brightened visibly when she spotted them. Maria, Miguel. Perfect timing. She drew them into her circle. Judge Martinez, Mrs. Martinez, this is my sister, Maria Rodriguez, and my nephew, Miguel. The casual introduction, my sister, sent a jolt through Maria. The judge and his wife showed only momentary surprise before warmly including them in the conversation. As the evening progressed, Catherine continued this pattern, introducing Maria to Boston's elite with the same straightforward acknowledgement of their relationship. Some responded with polite masks hiding obvious curiosity, others with genuine warmth. A few exchanged knowing glances, suggesting that the Harrington family drama had already circulated through Boston's upper echelons. Near the main gallery, a display chronicled the foundation's history, photographs of projects funded, communities supported, lives changed. At its center stood a large portrait of Robert Harrington Sr., the patriarch who had orchestrated Maria's separation from her mother. Imposing, isn't he? Said a voice behind her. Maria turned to find an elderly man leaning on a cane, studying her with interest. Walter Chen, he introduced himself. Robert and I were at Harvard together. You must be Maria. News travels fast, Maria observed. Walter chuckled. In these circles, like wildfire. But if it helps, most of us always suspected old Harrington Sr. had some skeletons in his closet. Man was too rigid not to be hiding something. He nodded toward the portrait. Piece of advice. Don't let him intimidate you, even in paint. The real power in the Harrington family has always been the women. Maria glanced across the room where Eleanor held court among a circle of rapt listeners. Her posture perfect, her gestures elegant. Despite everything, Maria couldn't help but admire her composure. The evening progressed smoothly until the formal program began. Eleanor took the stage to welcome guests and acknowledge the foundation's accomplishments. Her speech was practiced, poised, and progressively slurred as the evening wore on and her champagne consumption increased. The Harrington legacy, she emphasized, gripping the podium, built over generations of strategic planning and careful curation of both business and personal associations. From the side of the stage, Catherine winced visibly. My husband regrets he cannot be here tonight, Eleanor continued, though I'm sure some of you have heard rumors about recent additions to our family tree. Murmurs rippled through the audience. I can assure you that while Robert's health may be temporarily compromised, his judgment is quite intact. Mostly? Miguel moved closer to Maria, his expression concerned. Should someone before he could finish, Eleanor's gaze fixed directly on Maria. In fact, why don't we welcome the newest Harrington right now? Maria dear, come up and say hello to everyone. A horrified silence fell over the room. Maria felt hundreds of eyes turn toward her. Catherine quickly moved to the stage, taking her mother's elbow. Mom, let's take a break. Eleanor shook her off. No. Everyone should meet her. After all, she's been cleaning our house for 15 years. Isn't that a charming story? From maid to millionaire overnight. That's enough, Catherine hissed. But Eleanor continued. Did you know, she addressed the crowd, her words increasingly unsteady, that when I married Robert, his father warned me my primary duty was producing a proper Harrington heir, not love, not happiness, continuation of the bloodline. She laughed. A brittle sound, and now we discover he had an heir all along. One he didn't even know existed. Life's funny that way, isn't it? The room had gone completely still. Maria stood frozen, mortified, yet unable to look away as Eleanor's carefully constructed public persona crumbled before Boston's elite mom. Catherine said firmly, finally managing to guide Eleanor away from the microphone. Let's get some air. As Catherine led her mother off the stage, James Whittaker smoothly stepped to the podium, redirecting attention to the Foundation's upcoming initiatives. The crowd gradually resumed their conversations, though now with an electric undercurrent of fresh gossip. Miguel appeared at Maria's side. Are you okay? Maria nodded, though her cheeks burned with humiliation. I should go. No, the voice came. From behind them, Catherine had returned, her expression determined. Don't give her the satisfaction. She's your mother, Maria pointed out. You should be with her. She's with her assistant in the lounge. This isn't her first public ... episode. Catherine's voice held equal parts frustration and sadness. But it is your first Harrington Gala, and I won't let her ruin it for you. Taking Maria's arm, Catherine led her to the center of the room, directly beneath the museum's grand rotunda. Everyone, she called out, her voice carrying with practiced authority. While my father couldn't be here tonight, I know he'd want me to properly introduce someone special. She smiled at Maria. My sister, Maria Rodriguez, whose dedication to family rivals anyone I know. The Foundation's future will be brighter with her insight and perspective. The simple gesture, acknowledgement from a Harrington by choice, rather than obligation, brought unexpected tears to Maria's eyes. As polite applause filled the room, she realized that for the first time since discovering the locket, she felt not like an intruder in the Harrington world, but like someone who might, eventually, find her place within it. The morning after the gala, Maria arrived at the mansion to find Dorothea waiting for her in the kitchen, an expression of reluctant sympathy on her weathered face. Mrs. Harrington's not coming down today, she announced, setting a tea tray with practiced efficiency. Catherine's asked if you'd take this up to her. Maria blinked in surprise. To Mrs. Harrington? Are you sure? That's what she said. Dorothea shrugged, though her eyes held knowing concern. After last night's performance, I'd tread carefully. If I were you. Maria took the tray, its familiar weight now laden with new significance. For 15 years, she had delivered countless meals to the Harringtons, always with professional detachment. Today felt different, crossing a threshold that separated employee from family member. She knocked softly on Eleanor's bedroom door. When no response came, she balanced the tray and turned the handle, entering the dim room. Heavy curtains blocked the morning light, leaving only a bedside lamp illuminating Eleanor's form beneath silk sheets. Leave it on the table, Eleanor said without opening her eyes. Her voice ragged. Maria set the tray down silently, then hesitated. Protocol dictated she should exit without engaging, but the rules that had governed their relationship for 15 years no longer applied. Catherine asked me to make sure you take your medication, she said, spotting the pill bottles on the nightstand. Eleanor's eyes opened, narrowing when she recognized Maria. Of course she did. How fitting. I can get Catherine, if you prefer. No. Eleanor pushed herself to sitting position, her silver hair falling loose around shoulders that seemed smaller without her usual perfect posture. Without makeup and designer clothes, she looked older, more vulnerable. You're here now. Might as well witness the complete humiliation. Maria poured tea with practiced movements. People were more concerned with the Foundation announcements than ... anything else. Spare me the kindness, Maria. Eleanor accepted the teacup with a trembling hand. We both know I made a spectacle of myself. By noon, every society matron in Boston will be dissecting my breakdown over lunch. An awkward silence fell between them. Maria had turned to leave when Eleanor spoke again. Did you know I grew up in Dorchester? The question came so unexpectedly that Maria turned back in surprise. Not the gentrified version you see today. The Dorchester of the 1960s, where my father drove a delivery truck and my mother cleaned houses. Maria remained silent, sensing Eleanor needed to speak more than she needed responses. The Whitmores of Beacon Hill that came later. After I reinvented myself at Boston University, changed my accent, learned which fork to use. Eleanor laughed bitterly. When Robert Harrington Sr. vetted me as a potential daughter-in-law, I lived in terror he'd discovered my background. But he was so focused on my bloodlines, my connections. He never thought to look at my origins. She sipped her tea, grimacing at either the taste or the memory. I wasn't Robert's first choice, you know. Even before your mother, there was someone else, an art history student he met in college. But she wasn't suitable, just as Alina wasn't. Suitable. But you were, Maria said quietly. I made myself suitable, Eleanor corrected. I studied the right people, wore the right clothes, said the right things. I built Eleanor Whitmore Harrington from nothing. Her gaze hardened. Do you have any idea what that's like? To construct yourself so completely that even you start to believe the fiction. Maria thought of her mother, who had worked 3 jobs to provide for her, who had hidden her pain behind smiles and reassurances. Yes, she said simply, I think I do. Something shifted in Eleanor's expression, not quite recognition, but perhaps a flicker of reassessment. When I learned about Elena's pregnancy, she continued after a moment, we were already engaged. Robert was devastated by the news of the baby's death. He wanted to find Alina to comfort her. His father intervened and you, Maria asked. What did you want? Eleanor met her gaze directly for perhaps the first time. I wanted the life I'd worked so hard to secure. The position, the name, the future. So when Robert's father told me what he'd done paying doctors to lie, arranging the adoption, I didn't object. You knew I was alive. All this time, not you specifically. I knew the baby lived, that it had been placed with a good family. I didn't know it was you until she stopped. Until when? Eleanor's fingers traced the rim of her teacup. Until Robert hired you 15 years ago. Something about your name, your age, your resemblance to a woman in a photograph he kept hidden. I suspected immediately. The revelation struck Maria like a physical blow. You've known who I was for 15 years, and still treated me like the help. Eleanor's smile was thin. What would you have had me do? Welcome my husband's love child into our family. Destroy the life I'd built, the family I'd raised. She shook her head. I did what I've always done. I protected what was mine. By keeping me in my place, Maria said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. By maintaining the order of things. Eleanor set down her cup with a decisive click. The irony is, I grew to respect you over the years. Your work ethic, your dignity, the way you raised your son alone. A hint of genuine emotion crept into her voice. In another life, we might have been friends. Maria found it hard to reconcile this Eleanor reflective, almost vulnerable with the woman who had looked through her for 15 years. Why are you telling me this now? Because it's over, Eleanor said simply. My carefully constructed world, my position, perhaps even my marriage. Robert has made his choice. He's not choosing between us, Maria pointed out. Acknowledging me doesn't erase your life with him. Doesn't it? Eleanor's laugh held no humor. You don't know my husband as well as you think. Robert Harrington collects regrets, like some men collect art. His father's heavy hand. Business decisions he questioned but didn't fight. Abandoning your mother. She looked away. Now he has a chance to correct at least one of those regrets. To be the man he always believed he should have been. At your expense. At all our expense, I suspect. Eleanor's gaze returned to Maria, assessing, though, perhaps you'll fare better than the rest of us. You haven't had time to disappoint him yet. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Dorothea entered without waiting for a response, her expression suggesting she'd been listening outside. The hospital called, she announced. Mr. Harrington is being discharged this afternoon. Miss Catherine has gone to bring him home. Eleanor nodded, instantly reclaiming some of her usual composure. Thank you, Dorothea. Please inform the staff, and have my blue suit pressed. As Dorothea withdrew, Eleanor turned back to Maria. Well, it seems the prodigal father returns. We should prepare for the grand reunion. Maria stood, gathering the tea things. I should get back to work. Yes, I suppose you should. Though I wonder, Eleanor tilted her head, studying Maria with new interest. Will you continue cleaning our home now that you're entitled to a portion of it? The question gave Maria pause. In the whirlwind of revelations, she hadn't considered the practical implications for her daily life. I don't know, she admitted. This job has supported Miguel and me for 15 years. I'm not ashamed of it. No, Eleanor agreed, surprising her. You shouldn't be. She adjusted her sheets with practiced dignity. We all do what we must to survive, Maria. Some clean houses, others reinvent themselves entirely. As Maria turned to leave, Eleanor called after her. One more thing. Her voice had returned to its usual crispness, but something in her eyes remained softer than before. The locket? It was a wedding gift from Robert. I stopped wearing it the day I suspected who you were. Why keep it all these years? Eleanor's smile held decades of complicated emotion. Some chains are more difficult to break than others. I imagine you'll discover that for yourself soon enough. The morning newspaper lay open on the kitchen table. Its headline stark in bold print. Harrington heir apparent, cleaning lady revealed. As tycoon's daughter. Beneath it, a photo of Maria at the gala, looking uncomfortable in her blue gown. As Eleanor gesticulated from the podium behind her, Maria stared at the paper, her coffee growing cold beside it. The article detailed Robert's health crisis, the revelation of a love child from a decades-old affair, and the domestic employee elevated to heiress status. Each word felt like an invasion, transforming her private struggle into public spectacle. Don't read that trash, Catherine advised, entering the kitchen in a tailored suit, her hair still damp from the shower. Dad's going to be furious when he sees it. It was bound to happen, Maria replied, closing the newspaper. The senior mother caused at the gala would have remained society gossip if someone hadn't leaked the amended will to the press. Catherine poured herself coffee with sharp movements that betrayed her anger. James is looking into it. Robert had been home for 3 days, confined mostly to his bedroom under doctor's orders. Maria had seen him only briefly, their interaction stilted by the presence of nurses and Eleanor's watchful gaze. Has your mother said anything more about the will? Maria asked. Catherine's expression hardened. She's meeting with her attorneys this morning, plural. She's contesting it. Of course she is. Catherine sat across from Maria with a sigh. Look, you should know this could get ugly. Mother's built her entire identity around being a Harrington. She's not going to share that without a fight. I don't want to fight, Maria insisted. I never asked for any of this. It doesn't matter what you want. The minute Dad signed that amendment, this became bigger than all of us. Catherine rubbed her temples. The Harrington holdings are extensive: the bank, real estate, the foundation. There are shareholders, board members, charitable commitments. People who won't be happy about a sudden change in succession plans. Before Maria could respond, Miguel entered, dressed in a suit that seemed more formal than his usual law school attire. Going somewhere? Maria asked. Meeting with Professor Abernathy. At her questioning look, he elaborated. She specializes in estate law. After seeing that article, I thought we should be prepared. Catherine studied him with newfound respect. Smart move. I don't need a lawyer, Maria protested. I'm not suing anyone, Mama, Miguel said gently. Mrs. Harrington has engaged 3 attorneys from Blackwell and Schmidt. They're not known for handling amicable family matters. The doorbell interrupted their discussion. James Whittaker entered the kitchen moments later, looking grave. I was coming to warn you, he said, setting his briefcase on the table, but I see you've already seen the paper. I should have anticipated Eleanor would move quickly. What's happening, James? Catherine asked. Eleanor's attorneys have filed a motion challenging the amendment to Robert's will. They're claiming he was not of sound mind due to his medical condition and medication. Maria's stomach twisted. Can they do that? They can try, James replied. I was present when Robert signed the amendment. He was lucid and determined. But they'll argue the emotional stress of his heart attack impaired his judgment. What does my father say about this? He doesn't know yet. The doctors have advised against upsetting him during recovery. Convenient timing, Miguel observed, James turned to him with interest. You're in law school, correct? Boston University. Miguel nodded. Professor Abernathy's course on inheritance law. Yes, sir. James smiled slightly. I guest lecture there occasionally. She's excellent. He turned back to Maria. You should know, they're also demanding DNA testing to prove I'm Robert's daughter. Maria felt her face flush with indignation. After he's already acknowledged me. Standard procedure in contested paternity cases, especially with significant assets involved. James hesitated. There's more. They're investigating your background, Maria, and Miguel's. For what purpose? Miguel asked, his voice hardening. To build a case that your mother has orchestrated this for financial gain. They'll look for any irregularities, any history that might suggest opportunism. Maria laughed, the sound hollow even to her own ears. I've cleaned their toilets for 15 years. If I were an opportunist, I'd have found a more efficient path. Nevertheless, James continued, you should be prepared. This will become personal. It already is personal, Catherine interjected. They're attacking my sister and nephew. The casual claim of kinship, my sister and nephew, still startled Maria. In the midst of chaos, Catherine had emerged as an unexpected ally. What do we do? Maria asked. First, you need proper representation, James advised. I'm Robert's attorney, but this situation requires someone focused solely on your interests. He turned to Miguel. What did Professor Abernathy suggest? Mendoza and Associates, they specialize in complex family law. James nodded approvingly. Good choice. Eleanor won't expect you to move so quickly or strategically. This is insane, Maria said, standing abruptly. We're talking about lawyers and strategies like we're planning a war. We are, Catherine replied grimly. Mother fired the first shot, but we need to respond. Maria challenged. This is between your mother and me. You shouldn't have to choose sides. Catherine's expression softened. I'm not choosing sides, Maria. I'm choosing truth. Dad has acknowledged you as his daughter. You are my sister. Those are facts, not opinions. A sound from the doorway drew their attention. Eleanor stood there, immaculately dressed in a designer suit, her expression cold as she surveyed the gathered group. A family meeting without the family matriarch, she asked, her voice brittle. How appropriate. Mother, Catherine began. We need to talk about this reasonably. I think my attorneys made my position quite clear. Eleanor's gaze settled on Maria. I've allowed this charade to continue out of concern for Robert's health. But make no mistake, will not stand by while my family's legacy is hijacked by sentimentality and guilt. Mrs. Harrington, James interjected. Pursuing this course will only cause pain for everyone involved, including Robert. Robert made his choice, Eleanor replied. Now I'm making mine. She turned back to Maria. You may have his blood, but you know nothing about being a Harrington. The responsibilities, the sacrifices, the cost. I never claimed to, Maria said quietly. I didn't ask for any of this. Yet, here you are, Eleanor observed, with your law student son and your supporters, plotting strategy at my kitchen table. She smiled thinly. Perhaps you're more of a Harrington than I thought. As Eleanor departed, the weight of her words settled over the room. Maria looked at the faces around her. Catherine's determined, Miguel's protective, James's concerned, and realized that whatever her intentions, she had been drawn into a battle that would define not just her identity, but her relationship with everyone present. The newspaper headlines seemed to mock her from the table. Harrington, heir apparent. No longer just Maria Rodriguez, cleaning lady and single mother. No longer invisible. For better or worse, she had stepped into the light, and there would be no returning to the shadows. For 5 days, the legal preparations escalated while Robert remained largely sequestered in his bedroom, attended by nurses, and visited only by Eleanor and occasionally Catherine. Maria continued her cleaning duties in the mansion, though now with the awkward awareness that she moved through rooms she might one day partially own. On the 6th day, as Maria dusted the bookshelves in the library, a commotion erupted from upstairs. Raised voices, hurried footsteps, the slam of a door. Minutes later, Catherine appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of relief and anxiety. Dad's asking for you, she said without preamble. He found the newspaper, Maria set down her dusting cloth. Eleanor is furious. She tried to keep it from him, but James brought him up to speed this morning. Catherine ran a hand through her hair, a gesture Maria now recognized as inherited from Robert. He's not supposed to get agitated, but he's insisting on talking to everyone. Together. The master bedroom had been transformed into a medical suite, monitors beside the bed, medication arranged on the nightstand, an oxygen tank standing ready. Robert sat propped against pillows, pale but alert, a newspaper clutched in his hand. Eleanor stood by the window, her back rigid. James Whittaker occupied an armchair in the corner, his expression carefully neutral. "Maria," Robert said, his voice stronger than she had expected. "Come in. Where's Miguel?" "At the law library. He has exams next week." Robert nodded approvingly. "Education first. Good." He tapped the newspaper. "Though it seems he's been getting practical experience in family law ahead of schedule." Maria remained near the doorway, uncertain of her place in this tense tableau. "Mr. Harrington, Robert," he corrected. "Under the circumstances, I think we're past formalities." From the window, Eleanor made a small, dismissive sound. "I've been talking with James," Robert continued, ignoring his wife's reaction. "He tells me things have become complicated in my absence." "That's one word for it," Catherine commented. Perching on the edge of her father's bed, Robert studied each face in turn, his gaze lingering on Eleanor's rigid back. "This isn't how I wanted this to unfold. For any of you. Yet here we are," Eleanor said, finally turning to face them. "Your deathbed confession has thrown our family into chaos and made us tabloid fodder." "I'm not dead yet, Eleanor," Robert replied mildly, "though I understand you've been planning for that contingency with impressive thoroughness." Eleanor flushed. "I'm protecting what we built." "What we built," Robert repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, let's talk about that." He gestured to James, who produced a folder from his briefcase. "I've reviewed the legal filings, the claims about my mental competence, the demands for DNA testing, the investigation into Maria's background." "Standard procedure," Eleanor said defensively. "Is it?" Robert's voice hardened. "Is it also standard procedure to hire private investigators to follow my daughter and grandson? To contact Miguel's professors seeking evidence of academic impropriety? To question my former employees about my relationship with Elena Rodriguez? 45 years ago, Eleanor's silence was answer enough. "I made a terrible mistake decades ago," Robert continued, his gaze moving to Maria. "I accepted a lie because it was easier than fighting for the truth. I abandoned a woman I loved and a child I didn't know existed. That shame has lived inside me every day since." He turned back to Eleanor. "But you, Eleanor, you knew. For 15 years, you watched Maria work in our home, knowing who she likely was, and said nothing." "I protected our family," Eleanor insisted. "The family you seemed perfectly content with until your heart attack made you sentimental about past regrets." "It wasn't sentimentality that changed my mind," Robert replied. "It was finding the locket. Seeing Elena's photograph again. Realizing that Maria had discovered it, that the truth I'd buried was finally surfacing whether I was ready or not." He reached toward the nightstand, opening a small drawer and withdrawing a familiar silver object. The locket gleamed in his palm. "Eleanor returned this to me yesterday," he explained, holding it out to Maria. "It belongs to you now." Maria hesitated before accepting it, aware of Eleanor's gaze boring into her. "This isn't just about a piece of jewelry," Robert continued. "It's about acknowledging the truth, all of it. Not just Maria's parentage, but the deceptions that followed." He looked directly at his wife, "Including yours, Eleanor." Eleanor's carefully maintained composure wavered. "What are you suggesting?" "I've had a lot of time to think these past days, to remember conversations, incidents, patterns over the years." Robert's voice remained steady. "You knew about Maria before I did. You suspected when I hired her 15 years ago. Perhaps you even arranged for her application to reach me." "That's absurd," Eleanor scoffed. But a flicker of something uncertainty, guilt crossed her face. "Is it?" Robert pressed. "You've always been meticulous about household staff. Yet you approved hiring a woman whose background you'd barely checked, whose references were minimal. A woman who resembled a photograph you'd seen in my desk." Catherine looked between her parents, realization dawning. Mom, did you deliberately bring Maria into our home? Eleanor's silence stretched painfully before she finally spoke. You were pulling away, she said to Robert, her voice barely audible, distant, restless. Talking about legacy and meaning. I thought she stopped, collecting herself. I thought, if you had your daughter close, even without knowing, it might satisfy whatever was missing. The admission hung in the air, stunning in its calculation and, in a twisted way, its devotion. All these years, Maria said, finding her voice at last. You watched me clean your home, serve your meals, knowing I might be Robert's daughter. Why not just tell him, and lose everything? Eleanor laughed bitterly. The moment he knew, you would become his priority, his chance at redemption. I've seen how Robert Harrington handles guilt with grand gestures and complete commitment. There would be nothing left for me. That's not true, Robert objected, though his tone lacked conviction. Isn't it? Eleanor challenged. Look at you. Now ready to append our entire life to atone for a 45-year-old mistake. Not just to atone, Robert corrected. To do what's right, finally. He turned to Maria, his expression softening. I can't change the past. I can't give you back the years we lost, or erase the inequality between us, but I can acknowledge you as my daughter. I can ensure you and Miguel have the opportunities and security you deserve. I can make sure the world knows you belong to this family as much as anyone born to the name, and me, Eleanor asked quietly. What happens to me in this new family configuration? Robert regarded his wife with a complex mixture of emotions. Anger, certainly, but also something that looked surprisingly like compassion. That depends on you, Eleanor. On whether you can accept that our family has changed. On whether you're willing to end this legal assault and find a way forward together. Together, Eleanor repeated skeptically. One big happy family, the wife, the daughter from an affair, all sharing holiday dinners. It won't be easy, Robert acknowledged, for any of us. But continuing this battle will only destroy what remains of our family. Is that really what you want? Eleanor's gaze moved from Robert to Catherine, then finally to Maria, her expression unreadable. And if I can't accept this new ... arrangement, Robert's face showed his sadness but also his resolve. Then we have larger decisions to make about our future. Together or apart. The ultimatum landed with the weight of 46 years of marriage, decades of shared history, mutual compromise, and complicated devotion. For the first time since Maria had known her, Eleanor Harrington looked genuinely uncertain. Catherine broke the tense silence. Dad, the doctor said you need to rest. We can continue this discussion when you're stronger. Robert shook his head. I've rested enough. I want this resolved. He fixed Eleanor with a steady gaze. I need your answer, Eleanor. Are you willing to try? Or should I instruct James to begin separation proceedings alongside the will amendments? The question hung in the air between them, a crossroads with no middle path. Eleanor left the room. Without answering Robert's ultimatum, her heels clicking sharply down the hallway. The sound receded, followed by the distant slam of a door. Catherine moved to follow her mother, then hesitated, torn between familial obligations. Go, Robert said gently. She shouldn't be alone right now. After Catherine departed, an awkward silence settled over the room. James cleared his throat. I should review those documents we discussed, he said diplomatically, gathering his briefcase. I'll be in the study if you need me. When the door closed behind him, Maria and Robert were alone together for the first time since the revelation of their relationship. The medical equipment hummed softly, marking time between them. Please, sit, Robert finally said, gesturing to the chair beside his bed. Maria perched on the edge of the seat, the locket clutched in her hand. Up close, Robert looked both frailer and more determined than she had realized his complexion. Still pallid from his ordeal, but his eyes sharp with purpose. I'm sorry about all this, he began. The legal complications, the newspaper stories, Eleanor's reaction. It wasn't how I imagined introducing you to the world as my daughter. How did you imagine it? Maria asked. Robert smiled sadly. I'm not sure I ever allowed myself to imagine it fully. For decades, I believed you were gone before you had even lived. Then, when I began to suspect the truth, I told myself it was too late, that disrupting your life would be selfish. And now I realize that withholding the truth was the selfish choice. It protected me from facing my failures. He studied her face with unconcealed wonder. You look so much like her, Elena, especially around the eyes. Maria fingered the locket. I found her journal. She wrote about you, about how much she loved you. May I see it sometime? Her journal? Yes, Maria agreed, though some parts might be difficult to read. Robert nodded, understanding. I imagined they would be. He shifted against his pillows, wincing slightly. There's something I want to show you. In the drawer there, he gestured to the bedside table. Maria opened the drawer and found a worn leather photo album. Unlike the elegant, professionally arranged albums displayed in the sitting room, this one was simple, its pages slightly warped with age. I kept it hidden, Robert explained. Even from Eleanor, though I suspect she knew about it. He patted the bed beside him. Come, sit where I can see too. Maria hesitated, then moved to perch carefully on the edge of the mattress. Robert opened the album across their laps, revealing photographs she had never seen her mother as a young woman, laughing in a park, standing beside a much younger Robert on what appeared to be a boardwalk, reading on a blanket beneath a tree. We met when Alina worked for the Cabot's Friends of my family, Robert explained, his voice soft with memory. She was their housekeeper, taking English classes in the evenings. I was fresh out of business school, working for my father. He touched a photograph gently. Everyone assumed I'd marry someone from our social circle. But Alana, she was different. Real in a way no one else seemed to be. She never told me about you, Maria said. Not until the end, and even then, just fragments. She protected you, Robert observed, from the pain of knowing you had a father who didn't fight for you. He turned a page, revealing more photographs. Alina standing before a Christmas tree, her face radiant. The two of them at what appeared to be a small restaurant, their hands intertwined across the table. We had 9 months together, Robert continued. 9 months of planning a future my father ensured would never happen. His voice hardened. When he told me the baby you had died, something in me broke. I stopped fighting him, stopped believing I deserved happiness on my own terms. And my mother? Did you look for her? Yes, but half-heartedly. My father said she'd taken the settlement and returned to Puerto Rico. I called hospitals there, wrote letters that were returned. Eventually, I convinced myself she wanted to forget the past as much as I did. Robert's expression clouded with regret. It was easier than acknowledging I'd failed both of you. The door opened, and Miguel entered, his expression cautious. Catherine said you wanted to see me, Mr. Harrington? Robert brightened visibly. Miguel? Yes, come in. We were just looking at some old photographs. Miguel approached the bed, his gaze moving between his mother and the man who, biologically at least, was his grandfather. How are you feeling, sir? Better every day. And please, call me Robert. Sir makes me feel even older than I am. He studied Miguel with undisguised interest. Catherine tells me you're specializing in corporate law. That's the plan, Miguel confirmed. Though recent events have given me a new appreciation for family law. Robert laughed, then winced, pressing a hand to his chest. Yes, I imagine they have. When you finish law school, I hope you'll consider joining the legal team at Harrington Financial. We could use someone with your perspective. Maria tensed, uncertain how Miguel would respond to what could be perceived as either an opportunity or an obligation. Miguel's answer was diplomatic, but direct. That's generous, but I've accepted a position with Martinez and Cohen after graduation. Their pro bono program focuses on immigration cases. Rather than disappointment, Robert's face showed approval. Excellent choice. Judge Martinez is a man of principle. He closed the photo album, passing it to Maria. This is yours now. Along with this, he reached again into the bedside drawer, removing a small velvet box. Inside nestled a pair of silver earrings, their design matching the locket's intricate engravings. The complete set, Robert explained. I gave Eleanor the locket when we married, but kept these. They belong with you. The gesture, simple yet laden with meaning, brought unexpected tears to Maria's eyes. Thank you. A knock at the door preceded Catherine's return. Dad, you need to rest, she admonished gently. though her expression softened when she saw the three of them together on the bed. Mom's calmer now. She's asked for some time alone to think. Of course, Robert agreed. He turned to Maria and, Miguel, would you come back tomorrow? There's more I'd like to discuss. Plans for the future. As they prepared to leave, Robert caught Maria's hand. Wait, there's something else I need to say. Something I should have said immediately. His voice grew solemn. I'm sorry, Maria, for not being there. For not knowing you. For all the birthdays and school plays and graduations I missed. For not walking you down the aisle or holding Miguel when he was born. For every moment a father should have shared with his daughter. The simple, heartfelt apology free from qualifications or excuses touched something deep within Maria. For the first time since discovering the locket, she felt not just the pain of what had been lost, but the possibility of what might still be found. Thank you, she said softly. Outside Robert's room, Catherine walked with them toward the staircase. That went better than I expected, she admitted. Mother's still processing, but I think seeing the three of you together made this more real for her. Will she withdraw the legal challenges? Miguel asked. Catherine sighed. I don't know. She's built her entire identity around being Mrs. Robert Harrington. Sharing that even a little won't come easily. She looked at Maria. But for what it's worth, I meant what I said at the gala. You are my sister, and I'm glad to know that now. As they reached the foyer, the front door opened, and Eleanor entered, returning from what appeared to have been a walk in the garden. She wore no coat despite the December chill, and her usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled by the wind. The four of them stood frozen in mutual surprise, the awkwardness palpable. Then, to Maria's astonishment, Eleanor stepped forward and held out a small manila envelope. The DNA test results, she said, her voice carefully controlled. I had them rushed. Maria stared at the envelope without taking it. I didn't provide any samples. No, Eleanor agreed. But Robert did years ago, for a medical study. And I took the liberty of having your coffee mug tested after you left it in the sink last week. The calculation of it, the invasion, the continued control left Maria speechless. Miguel stepped forward, his expression hard. That's a violation of privacy, Mrs. Harrington. Perhaps, Eleanor conceded. But it's also an end to speculation. She pressed the envelope into Maria's hand. You are Robert's daughter. Biologically, incontrovertibly his child. The tests confirm it beyond any reasonable doubt. The admission delivered without warmth, but with unmistakable finality hung in the air between them. So what now, Maria? Finally asked. Eleanor straightened her shoulders, her social mask slipping back into place. Now we determine how to move forward, without destroying what each of us values. Robert has made his position clear. I am considering my options. It wasn't acceptance. Not quite. But it was a step back from outright hostility and acknowledgement, however reluctant, of a reality that could no longer be denied. As Maria and Miguel left the mansion, the weight of the photo album under her arm, and the DNA results in her hand felt like anchors connecting her to a past and future she was only beginning to understand. For the first time in her life, Maria Elena Rodriguez knew with certainty who she was, not just her mother's daughter. Miguel's mother, a woman who cleaned houses for a living, but also Robert Harrington's firstborn child. Catherine's half-sister, the product of a love that had survived in faded photographs and hidden journals. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be no instant transformation from cleaning lady to beloved heiress. But it was a beginning messy, complicated, and real. Just like family. The morning newspaper headline read, Harrington DNA test confirms cleaning lady's claim. Maria set it aside without reading further, tired of seeing her life dissected in black and white. 2 weeks had passed since Eleanor had handed her the test results. And while the legal proceedings had been suspended, an uneasy truce hung over the Harrington household. Maria had continued working, though her role had shifted in subtle ways. The other staff now regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and deference. Catherine included her in family discussions. Robert, steadily recovering, made a point of speaking with her daily, eager to learn about the decades of her life he had missed. Only Eleanor maintained her distance, her interactions with Maria limited to necessary civilities. She had withdrawn the legal challenges, but made no further move toward acceptance. On this particular morning, Maria arrived at the mansion to find unusual activity staff carrying boxes from Eleanor's private sitting room. Catherine directing movers with clipped instructions. The tension in the air was palpable. "What's happening?" Maria asked Dorothea, who was overseeing the packing of porcelain figurines. "Mrs. Harrington is moving her personal items to the Beacon Hill apartment," Dorothea replied, her expression carefully neutral. "Temporarily," she says. The news sent an unexpected pang through Maria. Despite everything, she had never wanted to displace Eleanor from her home. She found Catherine in Eleanor's sitting room, inventorying silver-framed photographs. "Your mother is leaving?" Catherine sighed, setting down a frame containing a younger Eleanor, receiving an award. "Her choice, not Dad's. She says she needs space to think." She glanced at Maria. "I told her it wasn't necessary, that no one was pushing her out. But she insists this is best for everyone involved. Is it because of me?" The question escaped before Maria could stop it. "It's because of 46 years of complicated history," Catherine replied, "only part of which involves you." She hesitated. "She was packing Dad's anniversary gift when I came in the first edition Austen he spent months finding. I think that says something." Before Maria could respond, a crash from upstairs interrupted them. They rushed to find Eleanor in the master bedroom, surrounded by shattered glass, a broken frame containing her wedding portrait. "Mother, are you all right?" Catherine hurried to check for cuts. Eleanor stood motionless amid the wreckage, her expression oddly detached. "It slipped," she said, though the wall hook it had hung from was at least 10 feet away. "Let me help." "Clean this up," Maria offered, stepping forward. "No," Eleanor's voice was sharp. "That's not your job anymore, is it? You're a Harrington now." She gestured around the elegant bedroom. "All this will be partly yours someday. The furniture I selected, the art I curated, the linens you've washed for 15 years. Mrs. Harrington, I don't want your home, don't you?" Eleanor challenged, her composure slipping. "The mansion, the social position, the name. Isn't that what everyone wants from the Harringtons?" Catherine touched her mother's arm. "Mom, that's not fair. Maria didn't ask for any of this. No, she just appeared on our doorstep 15 years ago, insinuated herself into our lives, and now stands to inherit half of everything I've built." Eleanor laughed bitterly. "A masterful long game. That's ridiculous," Catherine objected. Maria had no idea who Dad was when she applied for this job, but Eleanor wasn't listening. She moved to her jewelry box, removing items and dropping them into a velvet pouch with uncharacteristic carelessness. "You know what the worst part is," she continued, her movements growing more agitated. "You're exactly what he wanted, what he would have had with her. You're good and kind and hardworking, everything I had to pretend to be." The raw admission hung in the air. Maria and Catherine exchanged stunned glances. "Mother," Catherine began, carefully, "you don't mean that, don't I?" Eleanor turned, her perfectly maintained facade crumbling. "I've spent 46 years being what Robert needed me to be. The perfect wife, the consummate hostess, the dedicated philanthropist. I erased who I was to become Eleanor Harrington." She sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly looking older and smaller. "And now I discover it was all for nothing. He never stopped loving her, never stopped wishing for the child they might have had." Her gaze fixed on Maria. "The child they did have." Maria approached slowly, taking a seat beside Eleanor, with a careful distance between them. "He chose you," she pointed out quietly. "He built a life with you, because he thought you were dead," Eleanor countered. "If he had known, but he didn't know. And even after suspecting the truth for 15 years, he stayed. He raised Catherine with you. He built the foundation with you." Eleanor absorbed this in silence, her fingers twisting the wedding band she still wore. "I found these," Catherine said gently, holding out a stack of letters bound with faded ribbon. "In the back of your desk drawer. They're from Dad, aren't they? From when you were first together." Eleanor took the letters, her touch almost reverent. "He wrote every day when he traveled, even just across the city for meetings. Little notes about his day, things that made him think of me." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. No one would believe Robert Harrington was once so romantic. I would, Maria said, remembering the photographs of her mother. The way Robert's voice softened when he spoke of Alina. He loves deeply. Catherine is proof of that. So is the life you built together. Eleanor looked up sharply. Are you defending him after what he did to you and your mother? I'm trying to understand him, Maria corrected. All of him, the young man who loved my mother, the father who missed my childhood, the husband who built a life with you, the grandfather Miguel never knew he had. She hesitated. People can be more than one thing, even Harrington's a knock. At the door interrupted the charged moment. Robert stood in the doorway, leaning on a cane, his expression grave as he surveyed the scene, the broken glass, the half-packed suitcases, the three women seated amid the wreckage of 46 years. Eleanor, he said quietly, James told me you've withdrawn the legal challenges. Yes. Her voice was steady despite the emotion visible on her face. The DNA test was ... conclusive. And now you're leaving. It wasn't a question. I need time to think. To decide what I want. Robert nodded slowly. And what is that, Eleanor? After all these years, what do you truly want? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She looked around the room at the life she had constructed piece by perfect piece, then at her daughter, and finally at Maria. I don't know anymore, she admitted. The simple truth, perhaps the most honest thing she had said in decades. I've spent so long being what everyone else needed that I'm not sure what remains underneath. Robert's expression softened with understanding and something that looked remarkably like love, not the passionate love of youth, but the weathered, complex affection of a shared lifetime. Then perhaps it's time you found out, he said gently. Take the time you need. The Beacon Hill apartment. A trip to Europe if you want. Whatever helps you decide. And if I choose not to return? The question held both challenge and genuine uncertainty. Then we'll face that together, as we've faced everything else. Robert stepped further into the room, moving carefully until he stood before her. But know this, Eleanor, whatever you decide, whatever has happened between us, you will always be Catherine's mother and a part of this family. For the first time since Maria had known her, Eleanor Harrington's eyes filled with tears. She turned away, unwilling to let them witness this final surrender of her perfect composure. I'll send for the rest of my things later, she said, rising with the dignity that had defined her for decades. Catherine, would you help me to the car? As they left, Eleanor paused in the doorway, turning back to Maria. The silver service in the dining room, the Georgian set, needs special polish. Dorothea uses the wrong kind. With that final instruction, half household management, half concession, she departed, leaving Maria and Robert alone amid the remnants of a life in transition. 2 months passed. Boston's harsh winter began to soften, hints of spring emerging in the garden Maria had tended for 15 years. Crocuses pushed through the cold earth, their purple and white blooms defiant against lingering patches of snow. Robert's health improved steadily. He had returned to work part-time, attending board meetings and foundation events with renewed purpose. His relationship with Maria evolved cautiously, weekly dinners where they exchanged stories, photographs, and gradually built a connection that acknowledged their shared blood without forcing artificial closeness. Eleanor remained at the Beacon Hill apartment. She appeared occasionally at public functions, maintaining the family's social obligations with her customary grace, but returned to her separate residence afterward. The gossip columns speculated about an impending divorce, but neither Robert nor Eleanor confirmed these rumors. Catherine had become the unexpected bridge between the fractured family segments. She divided her time between the mansion, Eleanor's apartment, and occasional visits to Maria and Miguel's home. Under her influence, the legal matters had been settled quietly. Maria officially recognized in Robert's will. Miguel designated as a beneficiary of the Family Education Trust. Paperwork filed with a minimum of public scrutiny. On this particular afternoon, Maria worked in the garden. She could no longer bring herself to leave, despite Robert's repeated insistence that she didn't need to maintain her cleaning duties. The familiar rhythm of pruning early roses soothed her, the repetitive work giving her space to think. You always did love that garden. Maria turned to find Eleanor standing at the garden path, dressed impeccably as always. though without the intimidating formality she once maintained at home. Mrs. Harrington, Maria acknowledged, setting down her pruning shears. I didn't know you were visiting today. Eleanor, please, she corrected, surprising Maria. Under the circumstances, formality seems rather pointless. An awkward silence stretched between them. In the months since Eleanor's departure, they had encountered each other only at carefully orchestrated family events, exchanging minimal pleasantries before gravitating to opposite sides of the room. The David Austins are coming in nicely, Eleanor observed, gesturing to the rose bushes Maria had been tending. You planted those, didn't you? When we redid this section 5 years ago. Yes, Maria confirmed, surprised that Eleanor had noticed, or remembered. They're finicky, but worth the effort. Eleanor nodded, then looked around the garden with an expression that suggested she was seeing it anew. You've made it beautiful. I never properly acknowledged that. The unexpected compliment hung in the spring air between them. Maria waited, sensing Eleanor had more to say. Robert tells me you've refused to stop working here, Eleanor continued, moving closer to examine a budding rose. Despite his offers of alternative arrangements, Maria shrugged. I'm not ashamed of my work, and I'm not ready to be dependent on anyone, even family. Especially family, Eleanor corrected with unexpected insight. I understand that better than you might think. She gestured to a nearby bench. May we sit? There are things I should say to you, and standing in these heels isn't ideal for extended conversation. They settled on the stone bench that overlooked the garden's central fountain, another space Maria had lovingly maintained for years. Eleanor removed her gloves, revealing hands that showed her age more honestly than her carefully maintained face. I spent 6 weeks in Switzerland, she began. At a wellness retreat Catherine found. Very exclusive, very discreet. The kind of place where wealthy people go to fall apart privately. Maria remained silent, uncertain where this confession was leading. I've been angry for a very long time, Eleanor continued. At Robert, for never fully giving me his heart. At my circumstances, for forcing me to become someone else to survive. At you, for existing when I'd built my life on the belief that you didn't. She traced a pattern on her glove. It's exhausting, that kind of anger. It hollows you out eventually. Why are you telling me this? Maria asked quietly. Eleanor met her gaze directly. Because I owe you an apology. Not for protecting my family or my position, I won't apologize for that. But for how I treated you these 15 years. For knowing who you might be and keeping you in a position where I could control you. That was cruel. The admission clearly cost her, each word precisely chosen and delivered with effort. I didn't know, Maria reminded her. Until the locket, I had no idea. Which makes my behavior worse, not better. Eleanor sighed. The truth is, Maria, I was terrified of you. Of what you represented. The road not taken. The life Robert might have had if my father-in-law hadn't intervened. She looked out over the garden, her profile sharp against the spring greenery. Do you know, I was pregnant when Robert and I married. Not very far along, but enough that his father insisted on a quick wedding. I lost the baby 2 months later. Her voice held old pain, long buried. Robert was kind, but I could see his relief. He wasn't ready for a child with me when he was still grieving the child he thought he'd lost with Alina. Maria absorbed this revelation with growing understanding. I'm sorry, don't be. Catherine came later, when we'd built something real between us. Eleanor's expression softened at the mention of her daughter. But I never forgot that first pregnancy, or the way he reacted. It was the first time I understood I would always be competing with a ghost. And then I appeared, Maria said. The ghost made flesh. Exactly. Eleanor turned back to her. When I realized who you likely were, I should have told Robert immediately. Instead, I convinced myself I was protecting him from pain, protecting our family from disruption. But really, I was protecting myself from exactly what's happened now, the unraveling of the life I constructed so carefully. From Eleanor, this level of self-awareness and honesty was unprecedented. Maria studied her, noting the subtle changes. Since her departure, a slight softening around her eyes. A lessening of the rigid posture she had maintained for decades. Robert wants you to come home, Maria said. He misses you, does he? Eleanor smiled sadly. He has his long-lost daughter now, his grandson, the family he should have had. He has the family he did have, Maria corrected. Catherine needs both her parents, and Robert needs the woman who shared his life for 46 years. Eleanor looked skeptical. You're defending our marriage. That's unexpected. I'm acknowledging its reality, Maria clarified. What happened between my mother and Robert was 45 years ago. What happened to me as a baby was tragic, but it can't be undone. The life you and Robert built together is just as real as the life that never happened. Quite the philosopher, Eleanor observed, though without her former cutting edge. Just practical, Maria replied. There's no perfect solution here, no way to rewrite the past. We can only decide how to move forward. Eleanor studied her with new interest. And how do you think we should do that? Maria considered the question carefully. By accepting that family is complicated, that people can be both wrong and right, selfish and generous, damaged and whole. She gestured to the garden around them. Like this garden, some roots go deep. Some plants don't belong but grow anyway. Some need more care than others. But it all contributes to the whole. Eleanor laughed softly, the sound surprisingly genuine. Robert said you were wise. I thought he was being sentimental. She stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced elegance. I came here today because Robert asked me to attend a family dinner tonight. All of us together, you and Miguel included. I wanted to clear the air first. And have you? Maria asked, rising as well. Perhaps. Eleanor hesitated, then reached into her purse and withdrew a small velvet box. I also wanted to give you these. Inside the box lay a pair of pearl earrings, not ostentatiously valuable, but elegant in their simplicity. My mother's, Eleanor explained. The only thing of hers I kept when I became Eleanor Whitmore. Before that, I was Eleanor Prentice from Dorchester, daughter of a delivery driver and a cleaning woman. Her smile held irony and something like peace. Perhaps we have more in common than either of us realized. Maria accepted the box, understanding the significance of the gesture, not just the gift, but the revelation of a truth Eleanor had spent decades concealing. Will you come tonight? She asked. To dinner? Eleanor nodded, her decision apparently made. Yes, it's time to stop hiding. From Robert, from the truth. Her gaze met Maria's directly. From you. As Eleanor turned to leave, she paused. On the garden path. Those lilies by the pond, they're planted too close together. They'll choke each other out by summer. The return to household instructions might have seemed like a retreat to their former dynamics. But Maria recognized it for what it was. Eleanor engaging with her in the one space where they had always shared an unspoken connection. I'll thin them out tomorrow, she promised. Eleanor nodded, satisfied. Good. This garden deserves proper care. She glanced back at the mansion, its windows reflecting the afternoon sun. Some things, once neglected, can never be restored. But this, she gestured to the awakening spring garden. This still has potential. Whether she meant the garden, their fragile détente, or the fractured family attempting to find new configurations, Maria couldn't be certain. Perhaps Eleanor herself didn't know. But as she watched the older woman walk toward the house, back straight, head high, facing whatever came next with characteristic determination, Maria felt something unexpected, respect, and the first tentative seeds of understanding. 6 months later, autumn painted the Boston Common in fiery hues of red and gold. The Harrington mansion hummed with activity as staff prepared for a dinner celebration, Miguel's graduation from law school, and subsequent passing of the bar exam. Maria moved through rooms. She now navigated with a different kind of longer just spaces she cleaned, but rooms filled with evolving memories. The dining table where she had once silently served meals, now regularly included her place setting. The family photographs on the mantel now featured Miguel's graduation portrait alongside Catherine's. Is the cake here yet? Catherine called. From the kitchen, where she was unexpectedly helping Dorothea arrange appetizers. Her corporate suits had gradually given way to more casual attire, as she transitioned from her law firm to directing the expanded Harrington Foundation. Just arrived, Maria confirmed, adjusting a vase of autumn dahlias. Did you check if your mother needs help upstairs? The question still felt strange on her tongue, referring to Eleanor as Catherine's mother rather than Mrs. Harrington. Yet, another adjustment in a year filled with shifting identities. She's fine. Dad's helping her with her necklace. Catherine smiled. Who would have thought we'd end up here 6 months ago? Indeed, the transformation had surprised them all. After that first tense family dinner, Eleanor had gradually increased her time at the mansion, eventually moving back not into the master suite she had once shared with Robert, but into a separate bedroom she had redecorated to her own taste. The arrangement reflected their new reality, neither fully estranged nor completely reconciled, but finding a new equilibrium that honored both their shared history and their individual needs. The doorbell rang, announcing Miguel's arrival with his girlfriend Sophia, fellow law graduate he had met during his final semester. Maria greeted them with proud embraces. "Congratulations again, Mr. Eterna," she said, straightening his tie with maternal pride. Miguel grinned. "Thanks, Mama. Still doesn't feel real." "Well, it's certainly real to the clients at Martinez and Cohen," Sophia commented. "They've already loaded him with cases." "Just as it should be," came Robert's voice as he descended the stairs, one hand steadying himself on the banister, the other supporting Eleanor. At 69 his health had stabilized, though the dual heart attacks had left their mark. His hair had silvered completely, and he moved more carefully, but his eyes remained sharp and engaged. Eleanor followed, elegant in a navy dress, her expression warming noticeably at the sight of Miguel. The relationship had been the most surprising development of the past months, genuine affection that had grown from Eleanor's unexpected appreciation for Miguel's intelligence and ambition. "There he is," she said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. "Boston's newest legal mind. The bar results were never in doubt." "Thank you." Mrs. Miguel caught himself smiling. "Eleanor, your help with the practice interviews made a difference." It was true Eleanor had surprised everyone by offering to drill Miguel on potential bar exam questions. Drawing on decades of experience as a corporate wife well-versed in legal matters, their study sessions had evolved from stilted politeness to genuine intellectual exchange. The front door opened again as James Whitaker arrived, followed by Judge Martinez and his wife Miguel's mentors, and now colleagues. The entrance hall filled with congratulations and conversation as the group moved toward the dining room. Maria hung back slightly, watching the scene with a sense of wonder. A year ago, she could never have imagined this gathering her son celebrated by Boston's elite, herself moving among them, not as staff, but as family. The transition hadn't been seamless. There were still moments of awkwardness, boundaries being negotiated, old habits resurfacing, but the seismic shifts had gradually settled into a new landscape they were all learning to navigate. "Penny for your thoughts," Robert said, appearing beside her as the others moved ahead. Maria smiled, just taking it all in. He nodded, understanding in his gaze. "It's been quite a year." "That's an understatement." "Any regrets?" he asked, the question gentle but direct. "About the locket? About everything that followed?" Maria considered this carefully. "No," she finally said. "It was painful, messy, complicated. But the truth matters, even when it hurts." "Indeed it does." Robert's gaze moved to the dining room, where Eleanor was showing Sophia the antique silver candelabras, explaining their history with unexpected warmth. "Some truths take longer to accept than others, but we get there eventually." During dinner, conversation flowed with surprising ease. Legal discussions between Miguel and Judge Martinez, foundation updates from Catherine, Sophia's plans for her pro bono work with immigrant children, the divisions that had once defined the Harrington household upstairs and downstairs. Family and staff, legitimate and illegitimate, had not disappeared entirely, but had softened into something more permeable. As dessert was served, Robert tapped his glass for attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," he announced. "First, to Miguel, your achievement makes us all proud. Your commitment to using your legal education to help others speaks to your character." He raised his glass. To Miguel, everyone echoed. "And second," Robert continued, "I want to announce something. The Harrington Foundation is establishing a new initiative, the Elena Rodriguez Scholarship for Children of Single Parents. Maria will direct the program, providing educational support to students whose circumstances mirror her own early life. Maria looked up in surprise. Though she had been consulting on foundation matters, this specific initiative was news to her. "This feels right," Robert said, his gaze meeting hers across the table. "Using our resources to help others, while honoring the woman who should have shared in building this legacy." Emotion tightened Maria's throat. Her mother's name, once carefully excised from the Harrington narrative, was now being woven back into its fabric. Eleanor spoke up, her voice steady. "I've contributed my personal jewelry collection to fund the initial endowment. Items I no longer need but which can serve a better purpose." The gesture from the woman who had once defined herself by such symbols of status signified a transformation few could have predicted. After dinner, the party moved to the garden terrace. The evening air carried the crispness of autumn, but patio heaters created islands of warmth, where conversations continued in smaller groups. Maria found herself standing beside the rose garden, now prepared for winter but still beautiful in its structured dormancy. Eleanor joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. She offered one to Maria. "I never properly thanked you," she said without preamble. "For what?" "For not taking everything." Eleanor's gaze swept over the mansion, the grounds, the gathered guests. "You could have demanded more. Full recognition, public apologies, a larger share." "Many would have." Maria sipped her wine thoughtfully. "That was never what I wanted." "What did you want?" "When you found the locket, the truth," Maria answered simply. "Who I was, where I came from, the parts of my story that were missing." She smiled slightly. "The rest, all this was never the point." Eleanor nodded, understanding. "You're fortunate, you know, to be so clear about what matters to you." She looked toward the terrace, where Robert sat deep in conversation with Miguel. "I spent decades accumulating things I thought would fill the empty spaces. It takes remarkable courage to know yourself well enough to recognize what will actually do that." From Eleanor, this was extraordinary praise. Maria accepted it with a nod, knowing what it had cost the proud woman to offer such acknowledgement. Inside, someone had started playing the piano. Catherine, whose childhood lessons had recently been revived. The melody drifted through the open doors, drawing the outside guests back toward the warmth of the house. "Shall we?" Eleanor gestured toward the gathering. As they walked together, Maria noticed Robert watching them with an expression of quiet satisfaction. Whatever he had hoped for when he signed that amended will absolution connection. Family healing, perhaps. Some measure of it had finally been achieved. Later that evening, as guests departed and the house quieted, Maria found herself alone in the library. She had stopped by to retrieve her purse before heading home to her apartment space. She still maintained, despite Robert's standing invitation to move into the mansion, some boundaries remained important, some separations necessary for everyone's well-being. The locket hung at her throat, a constant reminder of the journey that had brought her here. She opened it, looking at her mother's young face, Elena Rodriguez, who had loved and lost and carried her secrets to the grave. "I wish you could see this, Mama," she whispered. "How it all turned out. She would be proud of you," Robert said from the doorway, startling her. "Of the grace you've shown through all of this. Of the man Miguel has become." Maria closed the locket gently. "Are you happy, Robert, with how things have settled?" He considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Happy isn't quite the right word. At peace, perhaps. Grateful for second chances, even those that come late in life." He moved further into the room, leaning on his cane. "Eleanor and I will never return to what we were. Too much has happened, but we've found something new, more honest, in its way." "And us?" Maria asked. "What have we found?" Robert smiled. "A beginning, not the one we should have had years ago, but one that honors the people we've become in the meantime." He reached for her hand. "I missed your childhood, your young adulthood. I can't recover those years. But I can be here now, for whatever time remains." The simple promise, free from grandiose declarations or excessive sentiment, felt right. Their relationship would never be a conventional father-daughter bond. It would be something unique, shaped by absence and discovery, loss and reclamation. "I should get home," Maria said, gathering her things. "Miguel and Sophia are coming for breakfast tomorrow." "Of course." Robert walked her to the door. "Will we see you Sunday for dinner?" The weekly family dinner had become a new tradition. Awkward, occasionally tense, but increasingly comfortable as they learned each other's rhythms. "Yes," Maria confirmed. "I'll bring dessert." At the door, Robert hesitated, then embraced her briefly. These moments of physical affection were still new, still tentative, but growing more natural with time. As Maria drove home through Boston's lamplit streets, she thought about the unlikely path that had led her here, from a child raised by a single mother who cleaned houses to support them, to a woman who had discovered her birthright in the mansion she had tended for 15 years. The story defied easy categorization. It was not a fairy tale of instant transformation, nor a morality play with clear heroes and villains. It was messier than that, more real. A story of flawed people making difficult choices, of truths long buried gradually surfacing, of healing that came not in dramatic moments but in small, daily acts of effort and forgiveness. When she arrived at her apartment, Maria removed the locket and placed it on her nightstand beside her mother's journal. The two objects, one hidden for decades, one written in secret, had changed the course of her life when they finally revealed their truths. Tomorrow, Miguel would arrive for breakfast, proudly wearing his new professional identity. Next week, she would begin work on the scholarship program bearing her mother's name. The Harrington family, her family, in all its complicated, reconfigured reality, would continue finding its way forward. The locket caught the lamplight, its silver surface reflecting the warm glow. Maria touched it gently, thinking of all it represented: loss and discovery, endings and beginnings, a circle finally completed after 45 years. "To my beloved daughter, never forgotten," she whispered, echoing the inscription that had started everything. Whatever came next, that truth, at least, had been restored.